In a glittering gymnasium filled with fathers and daughters, one wheelchair sat motionless in the corner, ignored, invisible, forgotten. While other children spun beneath streamers and laughter, 9-year-old Lila Pearson had learned that being different meant being alone. But when a humble janitor with calloused hands and a tender heart knelt before her, neither of them knew this single act of kindness would shatter the walls around a billionaire's empire and prove that love sees what money never can. Stay with me until the end of this story, and please comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale of hope and unexpected love can travel. The bass from the DJ's speakers thrummed through the polished floors of Maple Ridge Elementary's gymnasium, vibrating up through the wheels of Lila Pearson's chair and into her small, still body. Around her, the world spun in a kaleidoscope of pastel dresses and pressed shirts, fathers lifting daughters, daughters squealing with delight, everyone moving, everyone belonging, everyone except her. She had known it would be like this. She always knew. Lila's fingers traced the silver butterfly charm on her bracelet, a gift from her mother during one of those brief, awkward visits between board meetings. The gym lights caught the charm and threw tiny rainbows across her lap, small moments of beauty in an evening that felt like drowning on dry land. "Isn't this exciting, Lila?" Miss Patricia, her hired aide, chirped from beside her, scrolling through her phone with one hand while absently patting Lila's shoulder with the other. Patricia was nice enough, Lila supposed, but she was paid to be here, paid to smile, paid to pretend that sitting on the sidelines was somehow participation. Across the gymnasium, Mr. Henderson, the principal, stood with his daughter Emily, a girl from Lila's class who had never once asked her to play at recess. They were laughing together, his hand gentle on her back as he twirled her in a clumsy circle. Emily's face glowed with the kind of joy that came from being chosen, from being someone's whole world, even if just for an evening. Lila looked away, her throat tight. She had begged her mother not to make her come. "Please, Mom," she'd whispered during their last video call, her mother's face pixelated and distant on the tablet screen. "I don't want to go. No one will dance with me anyway." Adriana Pearson had looked up from whatever document she was signing, her expression softening for just a moment. "Sweetheart, Patricia will be there. You'll have a wonderful time. I promise I'll make the next one, okay? Tokyo needs me right now, but I'm thinking of you." Always thinking, never there. "Come on, everyone!" The DJ's voice boomed over the speakers, too enthusiastic, too bright. "Let's get every father-daughter pair on this floor. It's time for our special daddy-daughter waltz." The room erupted in movement, chairs scraped, girls grabbed their fathers' hands. Even the shy ones, the awkward ones, the ones who usually hung back, they all had someone pulling them forward, someone claiming them as worth the embarrassment of dancing in public. Lila's hands clenched in her lap. She could feel the familiar sting behind her eyes, the heat of tears she refused to shed. Not here. Not in front of everyone. "Oh, honey, do you want me to wheel you closer to watch?" Patricia asked, finally looking up from her phone. "It might be fun to see everyone." "No." Lila's voice came out sharper than she intended. "I'm fine here." Patricia's face flickered with something, relief, maybe, before she nodded and returned to her screen. Probably texting her real family, the people she actually wanted to spend Friday night with. The music shifted to something slow and sweet, a song about butterflies and wishes and all the things that felt like cruel jokes when you spent your life watching from the margins. Fathers and daughters swayed together, some stepping on each other's toes, some moving with surprising grace, all of them wrapped in a moment that Lila could see but never touch. She was invisible here. She was invisible everywhere. Lila had learned early that disability was a kind of disappearing act. People looked through her, talked over her, made decisions about her while asking everyone else what she needed. At school, teachers praised other students for simply saying hello to her, as if kindness toward Lila Pearson deserved an award. At her mother's corporate events, when she was occasionally paraded out for photo opportunities, staff members spoke to her aide instead of to her, asking, "Does she need anything?" while Lila sat right there, perfectly capable of answering. Even her mother, especially her mother, seemed more comfortable loving her from a distance, sending expensive gifts and hired helpers instead of showing up herself. The song swelled. A girl in a pink dress, probably a kindergartner, stood on her father's feet as he walked them both across the floor. The little girl's laughter carried across the gym, pure and unself-conscious, the sound of someone who had never questioned whether they deserved joy. Lila closed her eyes. Just a few more minutes. She could endure a few more minutes, then Patricia would wheel her out, drive her back to the big empty house with its 11 bathrooms and 0 family, and this night would join all the other nights in the catalog of loneliness that was her life. "Hey, superstar!" The voice was quiet, warm, and so close that Lila's eyes flew open. A man knelt in front of her wheelchair, eye level, actually looking at her, not through her, not past her, but directly into her eyes with an expression so genuine it almost hurt. He wore a janitor's uniform, the Maple Ridge Elementary logo embroidered on the pocket, and his hands were rough with work, but his smile was the gentlest thing Lila had seen in months. "You look like you're sitting this one out," he said, tilting his head slightly. "That doesn't seem right to me." Lila's breath caught. She glanced at Patricia, who had looked up with a frown, already moving to intercept this unexpected interaction. But the man held up one hand. "Wait," without taking his eyes off Lila. "I'm Noah," he said, as if they were meeting at a coffee shop instead of in the middle of her invisible nightmare. "Noah Carter. I work here at the school, keep things running smooth, and I was wondering if you might do me the incredible honor of sharing a dance." The words didn't make sense. No one asked Lila to dance. No one even asked Lila to partner up for class projects without teacher intervention. I can't dance," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "I'm in a wheelchair." Noah's smile widened, like she'd just said something wonderfully funny instead of devastatingly true. "Dancing isn't about legs, superstar. It's about moving with the music, feeling the rhythm in your heart. And from what I've seen of you around this school, you've got more rhythm in your heart than half the people in this gym." He'd seen her around school? The janitor had actually noticed her? "Besides," Noah continued, glancing over his shoulder at a girl about Lila's age who stood a few feet away, watching with the same gentle smile, "my daughter Haley here would really love to meet you. She's been hoping you'd have room for one more in your group tonight." The girl, Haley, stepped forward, her dark curls bouncing with the movement. She wore a simple blue dress and had the kind of face that seemed incapable of cruelty. "Hi, Lila," she said, as if they were already friends. "I love that butterfly bracelet. Did you know monarch butterflies migrate thousands of miles every year? My dad told me you're kind of an expert on them." Lila's mind reeled. He'd talked about her, to his daughter, with kindness instead of pity. Lila started, then stopped. Words felt impossible. The entire evening had taught her to expect nothing, and here was this man, this janitor with kind eyes, kneeling in front of her like she was someone worth kneeling for. "No one ever picks me," Lila finally managed, and the truth of it cracked her voice right down the middle. Something shifted in Noah's expression, a flash of pain that mirrored her own. He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and when Lila didn't pull back, he placed one warm hand over hers. "Well," he said softly, "I'm picking you tonight, if you'll have us." Behind him, the DJ started another song, something upbeat and joyful that felt like it belonged to a different universe. But Noah didn't move. He stayed there, kneeling on the gym floor in his janitor's uniform, his hand covering hers, waiting for her answer as if it mattered more than anything else in the world. Patricia cleared her throat. "Excuse me, Mr. Carter, was it? I'm Lila's aide, and I'm not sure this is—" "It's appropriate," Noah said, still looking at Lila. "It's kind. And it's an invitation, which means the choice is hers." His eyes held a question and a promise. "You are seen. You are valued. You are enough." Lila had spent 9 years learning that she wasn't enough. Not enough to keep her father from leaving before she was born. Not enough to make her mother stay home from business trips. Not enough to make classmates choose her for their teams or parties or friendship circles. But this man with his rough hands and gentle words was kneeling before her like she was a princess instead of the girl everyone ignored. "Okay," Lila whispered, and then, stronger, "Yes, I'd like that." Noah's smile could have lit the entire gymnasium. Outstanding choice. He stood, glancing at Patricia with polite firmness. "We've got it from here, ma'am." "Thank you." Patricia opened her mouth to protest, but something in Noah's expression, not aggressive, just unshakably certain, made her step back. She clutched her phone like a life preserver and nodded stiffly. Haley bounced forward and took Lila's hand, her touch warm and sure. "This is going to be so fun. Dad taught me this cool thing where we can make the chair spin and it looks like you're doing a twirl. Want to try?" Before Lila could answer, Noah moved behind her wheelchair. "May I?" he asked, hands hovering over the handles. "Yes," Lila breathed. And then she was moving. Not being pushed with the apologetic efficiency of Patricia or the clinical precision of nurses, but guided with joy, with purpose, with someone who understood that mobility was freedom, and freedom should feel like flying. Noah pushed her toward the center of the floor where other fathers and daughters danced, not hiding her away in a corner, but claiming space for her right in the middle of everything. The music pulsed through her. Haley walked beside the chair, holding Lila's hand, and when they reached an opening in the crowd, Noah began to move the wheelchair in gentle arcs that matched the rhythm of the song. He turned her in smooth circles, not too fast to be scary, but fast enough that her hair lifted and the lights blurred into streams of gold and silver. "See?" Haley laughed, spinning beside them. "You're dancing!" And she was. God help her, she was. Lila's heart hammered with something that felt dangerously close to joy. Around them, she could feel people noticing, conversations pausing, heads turning, but for once, the attention didn't feel like examination. It felt like witnessing. Noah leaned down as he spun her chair again, his voice close to her ear. "You're doing great, superstar. Want to try something fancy?" Lila found herself nodding, too breathless to speak. "Okay, Haley, hand positions." Haley stepped in front of the wheelchair and took both of Lila's hands, gently guiding her arms up and out. Then, as Noah pushed the chair in a wide, sweeping circle, Haley moved with them, creating the illusion that Lila was leading the dance, that her arms were guiding the movement, that she was the choreographer of her own joy. The song built to a crescendo, and Noah's movements matched it, spinning the chair in wider arcs, while Haley twirled beside them, and Lila felt something crack open inside her chest, something she'd kept locked away because hoping hurt too much. Other dancers had stopped now, creating space for them, and when Lila glanced around, she saw faces she recognized from school. Emily Henderson with her jaw dropped, Marcus Chen with a grin splitting his face, even some of the teachers clapping along to the rhythm. They were watching her, really watching her, seeing her. The song ended with a final flourish, and Noah brought the wheelchair to a gentle stop. Haley was breathing hard, her face flushed with exertion and delight. Around them, applause erupted. Not the patronizing kind that made Lila feel like a charity case, but genuine appreciation, the kind reserved for performances that moved people. "That was awesome!" a boy Lila didn't know shouted from somewhere in the crowd. "Can you teach me how to do that?" another voice called out. Suddenly, children were clustering around. Not their usual careful distance, but close, eager, asking questions and offering compliments. Marcus Chen knelt down beside her chair, his eyes wide. "Lila, that was so cool. How did you keep your arms so steady during the spins?" Before tonight, Marcus had never said more than 3 words to her. None of them had. I followed the music," Lila managed, her voice shaky with emotion she couldn't name. "You were amazing," Emily Henderson added, and she sounded like she meant it. "I've never seen anyone dance like that before." Haley squeezed Lila's shoulder proudly. "That's because Lila's special, and not in the dumb way people usually mean it. Special like a butterfly that everyone else thinks is just a regular moth." The comparison was so unexpected, so perfectly Haley, that Lila found herself laughing, really laughing, not the polite sound she made when adults tried too hard, but genuine mirth that bubbled up from somewhere deep and real. Noah crouched down beside her chair again, his face serious despite the smile playing at his lips. "Hey, superstar, how are you doing? That was a lot of spinning. Feeling okay?" The question was so simple, so direct, asking her, not her aide, not assuming but checking, that Lila felt tears spring to her eyes. "I'm dancing," she whispered, and then louder, fierce with the truth of it. "I'm dancing!" Noah's expression crumbled into something tender and fierce. "Yes, you are, and you're doing it beautifully." Around them, the crowd had started to disperse, pulled back into their own dances and conversations, but something had shifted in the atmosphere of the gym. Lila could feel it, a new awareness, a recognition that she existed not as a problem to solve or a charity project to support, but as a person who could contribute joy. The DJ put on another song, slower this time, and Noah glanced at Haley. "What do you say we do one more, all three of us?" "Yes!" Haley grabbed Lila's hand again. "And this time, Lila, you get to choose how we move. We'll follow your lead." "I don't know how—" "Sure you do," Noah said gently. "Just move your arms the way the music makes you feel, and we'll match you." So Lila did something she had never, ever done. She led. She lifted her arms, clumsy, uncertain, limited by muscles that didn't always obey, and moved them in small waves that matched the gentle rhythm of the ballad. And true to their word, Noah and Haley followed. Haley mirrored her arm movements, adding spins and flourishes that made Lila's simple gestures look like choreography. Noah pushed the chair in time with her movements, so that she was directing not just the dance but their path across the floor. She was leading, she was creating, she mattered. The song was halfway through when Lila noticed the woman in the doorway. At first she was just another adult figure at the edge of her vision, but something made Lila look twice. The woman stood absolutely still in the entrance to the gymnasium, one hand braced against the doorframe as if she needed it for support. She wore an expensive suit, the kind Lila had seen in her mother's closet, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun. Even from across the room, even through the colored lights and the moving bodies, Lila could see that the woman was staring directly at them, at her, with an expression of such raw emotion that it was almost frightening. Lila's arms faltered mid-movement. "You okay?" Noah asked immediately, slowing the chair. But Lila couldn't answer, because she recognized the woman now. Recognized the sharp cheekbones and the way she held herself like armor. Recognized the eyes that looked exactly like the ones Lila saw in the mirror every morning. Her mother. Adriana Pearson was here. Adriana Pearson, who was supposed to be in Tokyo negotiating a multi-billion-dollar merger, who had missed the last 3 parent-teacher conferences, who loved Lila from a distance measured in time zones and trust funds, was standing in the doorway of the Maple Ridge Elementary Gymnasium, watching her daughter dance with a janitor and his child. The world seemed to tilt sideways. "Mom?" Lila whispered, but the word was swallowed by music. Noah followed her gaze, his brow furrowing. "Friend of yours?" But before Lila could explain, before she could process the impossible fact of her mother's presence, Adriana moved. She stepped fully into the gymnasium, her heels clicking against the floor with the sharp precision that had terrified boardrooms from Silicon Valley to Singapore. Her face was unreadable now, the shock hidden behind the mask of control that Lila knew so well. Patricia materialized from wherever she'd been sulking, relief flooding her features. "Ms. Pearson, I didn't know you were— I was just about to call. Everything's fine. Lila's been perfectly safe." Adriana held up one hand, silencing the aide without even looking at her. Her eyes stayed fixed on Lila, on Noah, on this impossible scene of her daughter surrounded by joy. The music played on, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. Other dancers continued their movements, unaware that something monumental was shifting in the corner of the gym. Noah straightened slowly, his hand still resting protectively on Lila's shoulder. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice carrying a question and a challenge. Adriana Pearson opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and Lila realized with a shock that ricocheted through her entire body that her mother, her unflappable, always-in-control mother, was crying. Not sobbing, not dramatic, but tears tracking slowly down her cheeks as she stared at her daughter in the middle of the dance floor, wearing the expression of someone who had just watched a miracle and didn't know whether to be grateful or devastated. "Lila," Adriana whispered, and the single word carried 9 years of distance, 9 years of missed moments, 9 years of a mother who had somehow forgotten that money couldn't buy presents. The song ended. The gym erupted in applause for all the dancers, cheerful and innocent, while in one corner, a family fractured by absence and healed by a janitor's kindness stood frozen in a moment that would change everything. Noah's hand squeezed Lila's shoulder gently. Seems like someone else wants to share this dance, he murmured. We'll be right over there if you need us, okay? But Lila couldn't answer. She could only stare at her mother, this woman who had given her life but never time, who had built an empire but couldn't build a connection, who was looking at her daughter now like she was seeing her for the first time. Adriana took a step forward, then another, crossing the gymnasium floor with the careful movements of someone approaching something precious and fragile. When she reached Lila's wheelchair, she did something Lila couldn't remember her ever doing. She knelt. Right there, on the polished gym floor in her $1,000 suit, Adriana Pearson knelt in front of her daughter, the same way Noah had. Except her hands were shaking and her face was wet with tears she wasn't bothering to hide. I saw you dancing, Adriana whispered, her voice breaking on the word. Baby, I saw you dancing. And Lila, who had spent 9 years learning to expect nothing, who had built walls around her heart to protect it from disappointment, felt those walls crack as she whispered back, You came. I'm so sorry I almost didn't. Around them, the gym continued its celebration, fathers and daughters and music and laughter. But in this small circle of mother and daughter, the world narrowed to a single truth. Sometimes the most important dances happen in the heart, in the moment when walls come down and love finally finds a way in. But this was only the beginning, because across the gym, watching this reunion with a gentle smile, Noah Carter had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to unravel the loneliness of two families and weave them into something stronger than either had ever known. The music started again. Adriana reached for her daughter's hand, and somewhere in the doorway, a janitor with a kind heart and his daughter with her generous spirit quietly slipped away, leaving mother and child to find their way back to each other, one slow dance at a time. The morning after the dance, Noah arrived at Maple Ridge Elementary 2 hours before the first bell, just as he had every weekday for the past 3 years. The hallways smelled of floor wax and the faint chemical sweetness of cleaning solution, familiar scents that had become a kind of meditation for him. He pushed his cart past empty classrooms, checking thermostats and straightening chairs, finding peace in the quiet repetition of making spaces ready for children who would never know his name. Except now one of them did. He couldn't stop thinking about Lila's face when she'd whispered those words, I'm dancing. The pure wonder in her voice, the way her whole being had seemed to light up from the inside. It had reached into a part of Noah he'd thought was permanently closed off, the part that remembered what it felt like to make a difference in the world instead of just surviving it. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from Haley, who was sleeping over at his sister Maria's house. Dad, did you see the video? Emily's mom posted it, and Lila looked so happy. We're famous, lol. Noah frowned and opened his browser. Sure enough, tagged in the Maple Ridge Elementary Parents Facebook group, a shaky phone video showed him spinning Lila's wheelchair across the gymnasium floor while Haley danced beside them. The post had hundreds of reactions and comments, most of them positive, but a few made his jaw tighten. Sweet, but is this appropriate? The janitor dancing with students? Does anyone know this man's background? Just being cautious. I'm sure he meant well, but where was her actual guardian? Noah exhaled slowly and pocketed his phone. He'd learned long ago that you couldn't control what people thought, only what you did. And what he'd done was give a lonely child a few minutes of joy. He wouldn't apologize for that. The sound of expensive heels on linoleum made him look up from where he was emptying a recycling bin. A woman strode down the hallway with the kind of purpose that suggested she was used to owning every room she entered. It took him a moment to recognize her, the woman from the gymnasium doorway, the one who'd been crying while watching Lila dance. Adriana Pearson looked different in the harsh fluorescent light of early morning. Still polished, still obviously wealthy, but there were shadows under her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept. She spotted Noah and her stride faltered just for a second before she squared her shoulders and walked directly toward him. Mr. Carter, she said, and her voice had the crisp efficiency of someone who conducted negotiations before breakfast. I'm Adriana Pearson, Lila's mother. Noah straightened, very aware of his uniform, his cleaning cart, the smell of bleach on his hands. Ms. Pearson, nice to meet you officially. An awkward silence stretched between them. Adriana's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around the leather portfolio she carried, and Noah noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "I wanted to thank you," she said finally, the words seeming to cost her something. "For last night, for dancing with my daughter, for seeing her when I—" She stopped, her composure cracking. "When I wasn't there to see her myself." Noah set down the recycling bin carefully. "Leela's a special kid, smart, creative, kind. She deserves to be seen." "She talks about you." Adriana's voice was barely above a whisper now. "Did you know that?" "When I called her yesterday morning from Tokyo, she told me about the janitor who eats lunch with her sometimes, who asks about her butterfly drawings, who actually listens when she talks about migration patterns." Her eyes met his, and they were fierce with something Noah couldn't quite name. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? How many adults in her life treat her like a project instead of a person?" The accusation hung in the air, and Noah understood that she wasn't just talking about teachers and aides. "Miss Pearson, I canceled a $3 billion merger to get on a plane last night," Adriana continued, her words tumbling out faster now, as if she'd been holding them in too long. "My assistant thought I'd lost my mind. My board will probably try to stage a coup. But I sat in that Tokyo conference room, and suddenly all I could think about was Lila sitting alone at that dance with a hired aide, and I couldn't miss it, even if I was already missing it." Noah felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't the confrontation he'd been bracing for. This was something more complicated, more human. "You made it," he said simply. "That matters." Adriana laughed, but it was a broken sound. "I made it in time to watch a janitor give my daughter something I should have been giving her all along." She wiped at her eyes impatiently, smearing what was left of her mascara. "God, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. You don't need to hear about my failures as a mother." "I'm not here to judge anyone's parenting," Noah said quietly. "I'm barely keeping my own kid fed and clothed most days. But if you're asking my opinion, I think you being there last night meant everything to Lila, more than you probably realize." Adriana studied him with an intensity that made Noah feel like he was being cataloged, analyzed, compared against some internal metric he couldn't see. "Why do you eat lunch with her?" she asked abruptly. "My daughter. You're the janitor. You don't have to spend your break time with a 9-year-old. Noah leaned against his cart, considering his answer. 3 weeks ago, I was fixing a broken desk hinge in the cafeteria after lunch period ended. I saw Lila sitting alone at a table, drawing these incredibly detailed butterflies in a notebook. Everyone else was outside at recess, but she was there, completely absorbed in her art." He smiled at the memory. "I asked her about them. She told me she was drawing monarchs mid-migration, trying to capture the way their wings catch the light. And then she explained the entire life cycle, the generational journey, the way they navigate using the sun and Earth's magnetic field, stuff I didn't even know existed. She was brilliant and passionate, and so desperately lonely it hurt to see." He met Adriana's eyes directly. "So I started taking my lunch break in the cafeteria, asked her about her drawings, learned about butterflies, listened. That's all. I just listened." Adriana's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. She pressed her hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent sobs that she was clearly trying to contain. Noah instinctively reached toward her, then stopped, unsure if comfort would be welcome from a man she'd just met. But Adriana surprised him by stepping forward and gripping his forearm, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had tilted sideways. "I don't know my own daughter," she whispered. "I didn't know she ate lunch alone. I didn't know about the butterflies, the migration patterns, any of it. What kind of mother doesn't know her own child?" "The kind who's trying to build a better life for that child," Noah said gently. "The kind who's scared and overwhelmed and doing the best she can with impossible choices." "How are you so kind?" Adriana looked up at him bewildered. "I'm a stranger. A wealthy stranger who clearly doesn't deserve the daughter she has. You should be judging me." "I don't judge people doing their best in hard situations," Noah replied. "I've been there. Different circumstances, maybe, but I know what it feels like when life doesn't go according to plan and you're just trying to survive." Adriana released his arm and stepped back, wiping her face with the heel of her hand. She looked around the empty hallway as if remembering suddenly where she was. "I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart in public, especially not with people I've just met." You didn't fall apart. You were honest. There's a difference. A small smile flickered across Adriana's face, there and gone so quickly, Noah almost missed it. Lila was right about you. She said you were the kindest person at this school. She said that? Yesterday, after we finished dancing, after I finally... Adriana's voice caught. After I finally held my daughter for longer than 5 minutes without checking my phone, she told me you were the reason she'd started looking forward to school days instead of dreading them. The weight of that statement settled over Noah like a mantle. He'd known his lunch conversations with Lila brightened her day, but he hadn't realized how much darkness those bright spots were pushing back against. Miss Pearson, he said carefully, I think Lila would really benefit from more time with you. Real time, present time, not just video calls between meetings. She's an incredible kid, but she needs her mom. I know. Adriana straightened her shoulders, and Noah watched her rebuild the armor of competence and control piece by piece. That's actually why I'm here so early. I'm meeting with Principal Henderson to discuss my involvement with the school. I'm going to start attending events, volunteering when I can, making myself available. No more Tokyo when my daughter needs me in California. That's good. That's really good. And I wanted to ask you something. Adriana's business persona was fully back now, confident and direct. Would you be willing to continue spending time with Lila, not as a replacement for me, she added quickly, but as someone who clearly means a lot to her, someone who sees her? I don't want to take that away from her just because I'm finally showing up. Noah felt something twist in his chest. He'd grown attached to Lila over the past few weeks, looked forward to their lunch conversations about metamorphosis and migration and the small wonders of the natural world. But he was also acutely aware of the dynamics at play, a janitor spending time with a billionaire's disabled daughter. The optics alone could destroy him if anyone chose to see it the wrong way. I'd be honored, he said finally, because refusing would hurt Lila, and that wasn't something he was willing to do. But Ms. Pearson, you should know that some people are already questioning it. There's a video from last night circulating online, and not everyone thinks it was appropriate for me to dance with your daughter. Adriana's expression hardened instantly. What people? Give me names. It doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. Her voice took on the edge of someone used to dismantling opposition with surgical precision. You showed my daughter more kindness in 3 weeks than most people have shown her in 3 years. If anyone has a problem with that, they can direct their concerns to me personally. Despite everything, Noah found himself almost smiling. I appreciate that, but I don't need you to fight my battles. I'm not fighting your battles. I'm fighting for my daughter's right to have people in her life who actually care about her as a person. Adriana pulled a business card from her portfolio and held it out. My personal number. If anyone gives you trouble, teachers, parents, administrators, you call me immediately. Understood? Noah took the card, heavy stock with embossed lettering. Ms. Pearson. Adriana, please. Adriana, he corrected. I think you and I both know that me calling you every time someone side-eyes the janitor isn't sustainable, but I appreciate the support. She studied him again with that unsettling intensity. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone looking for an angle, maybe, a connection to wealth, a story to sell to tabloids. She shook her head. But you're just decent. Actually, genuinely decent. It's disorienting. I'm really not that special, Noah said, uncomfortable with the admiration in her voice. I'm just a guy who likes your kid and wanted to help her have a good night. That makes you extraordinary. Adriana glanced at her watch. Elegant, probably worth more than Noah made in a year. I need to meet Henderson, but thank you, Noah. For everything, for seeing Lila, for being there when I wasn't, for showing me what I was missing. She turned to leave, then paused and looked back. She wants to invite you and Haley to dinner at our house this weekend, if you're free. She's been talking about it all morning, wants to show Haley her butterfly collection, wants to make sure you know that she wasn't actually dancing alone, that we danced together after you left. Adriana's smile was tentative, hopeful. Would you consider it? Noah thought about Haley, who'd already texted him 6 times about how much she liked Lila. Thought about Lila, who'd looked more alive during those few dances than he'd seen her look in weeks. Thought about the impossible gulf between a janitor's salary and a billionaire's mansion and all the ways this could go wrong. We'd love to, he heard himself say. Adriana's smile brightened into something real and warm. Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address. She hesitated, then added softly, "Thank you for not treating her like she's broken. You have no idea what that means to us." She walked away before Noah could respond, her heels clicking confidently down the hallway toward the administrative offices. Noah stood there for a long moment, holding her business card and trying to process the conversation that had just upended his quiet Friday morning. His phone buzzed. Another text from Haley. "Maria says we're having pancakes. Also, she wants to know if you're dating anyone because apparently you're trending on Facebook." Noah groaned and pocketed his phone. His sister meant well, but her enthusiasm for his love life, or lack thereof, was exhausting. He'd been alone since Sarah died 4 years ago, and he was fine with that. More than fine. Relationships required emotional energy he didn't have to spare when he was working full-time and raising a 9-year-old and trying to rebuild some semblance of a life from the ashes of everything he'd lost. Besides, the last thing he needed was to entertain any thoughts about Adriana Pearson beyond professional courtesy. She was grieving her absence from her daughter's life, and he was convenient, someone safe to admire because he'd shown basic human kindness. Nothing more. He went back to his morning routine, emptying trash cans and checking light bulbs, but his mind kept drifting to Lila's face when she'd realized she was dancing, to Adriana's tears in the gymnasium doorway, to the complicated weight of being seen as extraordinary for doing something that should be ordinary. The school day started, flooding the hallways with noise and energy. Noah moved through it like he always did, invisible to most. Acknowledged by some with brief nods or requests to check on broken equipment. He liked the invisibility most days. It was restful, undemanding, a far cry from his previous life when every decision he made affected millions of dollars and hundreds of employees. At lunch, he made his way to the cafeteria with his brown bag sandwich, expecting to find Lila at their usual table. But she wasn't alone. Adriana sat beside her daughter, still in her business suit, but with her jacket draped over the back of the chair, looking wildly out of place among the cafeteria tables and children's laughter. Lila saw him first. Her face lit up like sunrise. "Noah, come sit with us. My mom stayed for lunch." He walked over, very aware of curious stares from other tables. Adriana looked up at him with an expression that was part gratitude, part desperation, the look of someone drowning who'd just spotted a life preserver. "Please," she said quietly. "I'm completely lost. I don't know how to do this." Noah understood immediately. She'd shown up, which was huge, but now she was sitting with her daughter and had no idea how to bridge 9 years of distance across a cafeteria table. He sat down across from them, setting his lunch bag beside him. "Hey, superstar, how's your morning been?" Lila launched into an enthusiastic description of her science class, where they were studying insect life cycles. "And Mr. Patterson said we could do our projects on any insect we want, so obviously I'm doing monarchs. And I was thinking I could build a diorama showing the different stages across the 4 generations that make the full migration cycle and maybe use actual milkweed." She stopped abruptly, glancing at her mother with an uncertainty that broke Noah's heart. "Sorry, I'm talking too much." "No," Adriana said quickly, reaching for her daughter's hand. "No, sweetheart, you're not. Tell me more about the generations. I didn't know butterflies had, how did you say it? A migration cycle across multiple generations?" Lila's face brightened with cautious hope. "Really? You want to know?" "I really do." And so Lila explained, her words tumbling over each other with excitement, about how monarchs east of the Rockies made a multi-generational journey from Canada to Mexico and back. How each generation lived only weeks, except for the special Methuselah generation that lived 8 months to make the journey south. How scientists still didn't fully understand how they navigated thousands of miles to trees their great-great-grandparents had roosted in. Adriana listened with an intensity Noah recognized from their hallway conversation, not the polite attention of someone waiting for their turn to speak, but genuine fascination. She asked questions that showed she was actually processing the information, making connections, trying to understand not just butterflies, but the daughter who loved them. "That's incredible." Adriana said when Lila finally paused for breath. So the butterflies that fly north in spring have never been to Mexico, but they somehow know where home is because it's encoded in them genetically. Exactly, Lila beamed. It's like they carry the memory of the journey in their bodies, even though they never personally experienced it. Like inherited memory, Adriana murmured. Like knowing something without being taught it, because it's part of who you are. Noah watched the two of them lean toward each other across the table, mother and daughter finding connection through the language of butterflies and migration. Something warm and bittersweet expanded in his chest, joy at watching them build a bridge, sadness for all the time they'd lost. Noah taught me about Fibonacci spirals, Lila said suddenly, pulling him back into the conversation. Did you know butterfly wing patterns follow mathematical sequences? Show her, Noah. So Noah found himself explaining the mathematical patterns found in nature, using his napkin to sketch examples while both Pearson women watched with matching expressions of concentration. It should have been awkward, this strange lunch trio of janitor and billionaire and lonely girl, but somehow it worked. They were interrupted by Principal Henderson, who appeared at their table with the forced cheerfulness of someone delivering bad news. Miss Pearson, Mr. Carter, wonderful to see you both. Lila, sweetheart, how are you today? Good, Mr. Henderson. We're talking about butterflies. That's wonderful. Henderson's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Pearson, might I steal you for a moment? Just some administrative matters we should discuss. Adriana stood, squeezing Lila's shoulder. I'll be right back, baby. Keep explaining the Fibonacci thing to me when I get back, okay? She followed Henderson toward the cafeteria doors, and Noah watched her posture shift, saw the CEO armor snap back into place as she prepared for whatever battle was coming. He had a sinking suspicion he knew what administrative matters meant. Noah? Lila's small voice pulled his attention back. Are you in trouble because you danced with me? He turned to her, this small girl with her mother's sharp eyes and her own hard-won wisdom. Why would you think that? I heard some teachers talking this morning. They said it was inappropriate and that my mom should file a complaint or something. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I don't want you to get in trouble. Maybe we shouldn't eat lunch together anymore. Noah felt anger flare in his chest, hot and protective. Lila, listen to me. Nothing we did last night was wrong. Nothing we do at lunch is wrong. You deserve to have people in your life who care about you, who want to spend time with you. Anyone who suggests otherwise is... He stopped himself before he said something truly uncharitable about school administration. But what if they fire you? They're not going to fire me for being kind to a student, and even if they tried, I wouldn't regret it, not for a second. He reached across the table and tapped the notebook where she'd been drawing. You know what monarchs teach us? Sometimes the most important journeys are the ones that seem impossible. Sometimes you have to trust that you're going exactly where you need to go, even when the path is hard. Lila's eyes filled with tears. Everyone always leaves. My dad left before I was even born. My mom leaves all the time for work. Even the nice aides they hire, they never stay longer than a few months. Everyone leaves. The words hit Noah square in the chest, a mirror to his own daughter's fears after Sarah died. I'm not leaving, superstar. Not unless you want me to. Promise? He shouldn't promise. He knew better than to make promises he might not be able to keep, especially when his job security was apparently on thinner ice than he'd realized. But looking at Lila's face, seeing the desperate need for one person to choose to stay, he couldn't do anything else. Promise. Across the cafeteria, he could see Adriana and Henderson through the window of the hallway, clearly in a heated discussion. Adriana's hands moved sharply as she spoke, her expression thunderous. Henderson was shaking his head, holding up his hands in a placating gesture that was clearly not working. Your mom's really something, Noah said, trying to distract Lila from whatever argument was unfolding. I think Henderson might be regretting whatever he said to her. Lila giggled, a sound like wind chimes. Mom doesn't lose arguments. Ever. One time I watched her make a senator cry during a committee hearing about tech regulation. It was amazing. Remind me never to debate your mom about anything important. She likes you, Lila said suddenly, with the blunt observation of children who see more than adults give them credit for. She told me this morning that you were a good man with a kind heart. That's high praise. Mom doesn't trust easily. Noah didn't know what to do with that information, so he just smiled and changed the subject. Tell me more about this diorama project. Are you going to include the actual transformation stages? Lila dove back into butterfly talk with enthusiasm, and Noah let her words wash over him, grateful for her resilience, her ability to bounce back from hurt and find joy in the things that fascinated her. They were still discussing chrysalis construction when Adriana returned, her face flushed with anger but her smile determinedly bright. Everything okay? Noah asked quietly. Fine, she said in a tone that meant absolutely not fine. Just some administrative concerns I needed to address. Nothing that can't be handled. But the tension in her shoulders told a different story, and Noah suspected he'd be getting a phone call or email from Henderson's office very soon. The universe had a way of punishing people for stepping outside their designated roles, and apparently a janitor showing kindness to a billionaire's daughter was several steps too far outside his designated role for some people's comfort. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Students began gathering their trash and heading toward the exit. Adriana bent to kiss Lila's forehead, a gesture that looked both natural and carefully practiced, like she was relearning the muscle memory of affection. I have to get back to the office, baby, but I'll be home for dinner tonight. We can work on your diorama project together if you want. Really? Lila's face blazed with hope. Really? I promise. As students filed out, Noah began his lunch period routine of wiping tables and collecting forgotten items. Adriana lingered, helping Lila gather her things, and when Lila rolled toward the door with her classmates, Adriana turned to Noah with a look of barely contained fury. Henderson wants you to stop spending time with Lila, she said without preamble, her voice low and tight. He framed it as concern for appropriate boundaries and protecting the school from liability. But what he really means is that people are uncomfortable with the help getting too close to someone like me. Someone like you. Rich. Powerful. Important. She spat the words like curses. God forbid the janitor actually care about a child without having ulterior motives. God forbid basic human decency cross class lines without everyone assuming someone's trying to work an angle. Noah felt tired suddenly, bone-deep exhausted from years of being underestimated and undervalued simply because his job involved a mop instead of a briefcase. What did you tell him? I told him that if he interfered with the friendship between you and my daughter, I would personally ensure that every parent in this district knew that Maple Ridge Elementary prioritized optics over the well-being of disabled students. Adriana's smile was sharp as broken glass. I also reminded him that my foundation donated $500,000 to the school last year, and that my continued generosity depends on my confidence in the administration's values. You threatened him. I educated him on the consequences of poor leadership decisions. She crossed her arms. There's a difference. Noah should have been appalled by the blatant use of wealth as a weapon. Should have been uncomfortable with someone fighting his battles, especially someone he barely knew. But mostly he just felt grateful that someone with power had chosen to use it for Lila's sake instead of against her. Thank you, he said simply. Adriana's fierce expression softened. You don't have to thank me. This is what I should have been doing all along, protecting my daughter's happiness instead of just funding it from a distance. She glanced toward the door where Lila had disappeared. She's different since you've been in her life. Brighter, more willing to hope. I won't let anyone take that away from her. Still, you didn't have to fight for me. Yes, I did. Adriana met his eyes, and there was something raw and honest in her gaze. Because if I'd let Henderson bully you into staying away from Lila, I would have been just another person teaching her that the kindness of good people isn't worth protecting, and I'm done teaching my daughter that lesson. They stood there in the empty cafeteria, janitor and CEO, two people from impossibly different worlds united by their care for one lonely girl. Outside, children's voices echoed through hallways, the ordinary sounds of an ordinary school day. But Noah felt like something fundamental had shifted, like he'd stepped onto a path he couldn't see the end of, heading toward a destination that both thrilled and terrified him. Saturday, Adriana said, breaking the silence. 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address. And Noah? Don't dress up. We're having pizza and butterfly movies. Nothing fancy. Pizza and butterfly movies sounds perfect. She smiled, a real smile that transformed her face from beautiful to luminous. Lila's been planning the menu all morning. Apparently there are very specific pizza toppings required for proper butterfly movie viewing. I wouldn't dare question her expertise. Smart man. Adriana collected her jacket and portfolio. I should get to the office before my VP stages a coup. But I'm glad we talked this morning. I'm glad you exist, Noah Carter. She left before he could respond, striding out of the cafeteria with the confidence of someone who'd just won a significant battle. Noah watched her go, then looked around at the tables he still needed to wipe, the floor he needed to sweep, the ordinary maintenance of ordinary spaces that made up his days. But something had changed. He could feel it in the air, taste it like electricity before a storm. A door had opened that neither he nor Adriana nor Lila had expected, and walking through it meant entering territory none of them had mapped. His phone buzzed. A text from Maria. So are you going to tell me about this mysterious billionaire everyone's talking about, or do I have to cyberstalk her myself? Noah sighed and typed back, Nothing to tell, just being nice to a kid. That's not what Facebook says. That's not what your face said in that video. Call me tonight. He pocketed his phone and got back to work, trying to ignore the flutter of something in his chest that felt dangerously like hope, like possibility, like the beginning of a journey he hadn't asked for but somehow desperately wanted to take. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of golden light that made everything feel suspended between day and dreams. Noah stood in front of his bathroom mirror, trying for the third time to decide if his button-down shirt was too formal or not formal enough, then laughing at himself because Adriana had specifically said not to dress up. Still, showing up at a billionaire's house in his usual jeans and flannel felt wrong somehow, like showing up to a symphony in gym clothes. Dad, you're being weird. Haley appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her favorite purple dress with butterflies embroidered on the collar, a choice she'd made specifically for Lila. It's just dinner, with a new friend. Why are you acting like it's a job interview? I'm not acting like anything, Noah protested, finally settling on the shirt with jeans. I just want to make a good impression. You already made a good impression. That's why we're invited. Haley studied him with the unsettling perception of 9-year-olds everywhere. Are you nervous about the house being fancy or about seeing Lila's mom again? Noah turned to look at his daughter, this small person who saw through him with Sarah's same clear-eyed honesty. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just notice it more when it's inconvenient. She grinned. Aunt Maria says you have a crush. Aunt Maria needs to mind her own business. So you do have a crush. I have respect for someone who's trying to rebuild a relationship with her daughter, Noah corrected, which was true, and also completely sidestepped the question of why his heart had been doing strange acrobatics every time he thought about Adriana's smile, her tears, her fierce protectiveness of Lila. Now come on, we're going to be late. The drive to the Pearson house took them out of their modest neighborhood and up into the hills, where houses became estates and gates became necessary. Noah's old Honda felt wildly out of place among the manicured landscapes and million-dollar views. When his GPS announced they'd arrived at their destination, he found himself staring at a security gate that looked like it guarded a small resort. He rolled down his window and pressed the intercom button, acutely aware that somewhere a camera was recording his beat-up car and his nervous face. Hello? Adriana's voice came through the speaker, warm and slightly breathless. It's Noah and Haley. We're here for... The gate swung open before he could finish. Come on up. Follow the driveway to the main house. Lila's been watching for you since 6:30. The driveway wound through gardens that looked like they required a full-time staff to maintain. When the house came into view, Noah had to consciously keep his jaw from dropping. It was beautiful in that way that stopped being a house and became architecture, all glass and clean lines and expensive restraint. Whoa, Haley whispered. It's like a house from the future. Remember your manners, Noah murmured, pulling into the circular drive near the front entrance. And remember that houses don't matter. People matter. I know, Dad, but seriously, look at that infinity pool. Before Noah could respond, the front door flew open and Lila appeared, her wheelchair navigating smoothly across what was probably imported Italian tile. Behind her, Adriana stood in the doorway wearing jeans and a simple sweater, looking more relaxed and more beautiful than Noah had seen her yet. You came, Lila called out, her whole face radiant. Haley, wait until you see my butterfly room. And Noah, Mom ordered 4 different kinds of pizza because she wasn't sure what you liked, and we have 3 butterfly movies queued up. And breathe, sweetheart, Adriana laughed, walking toward them as Noah and Haley climbed out of the car. Let them actually get inside before you overwhelm them with the itinerary. Sorry, Lila didn't look sorry at all. I'm just really excited. Haley bounded over and grabbed Lila's hand. I'm excited too. Can we see the butterfly room now, please? Noah watched his daughter and Lila disappear into the house, chattering like they'd been friends for years instead of days, and felt some of his nervousness ease. Whatever awkwardness existed between him and Adriana, the girls had none of it. Thank you for coming, Adriana said softly, walking up to stand beside him. I know this is probably strange. It's not strange, Noah lied, then corrected himself. Okay, it's a little strange, but good strange. I'm glad to be here. She smiled and he noticed the tension around her eyes, the way her hands twisted together like she was fighting the urge to check her phone. I'm terrible at this. Hosting, I mean. I usually have people who handle dinner parties and social events. But Lila wanted it to be just us, just family. She stopped abruptly, color rising in her cheeks. Not that you're family, obviously. I just meant, I know what you meant, Noah said gently, charmed by her discomfort. The powerful CEO from the school cafeteria had disappeared, replaced by a woman trying desperately to connect with her daughter and not screw up the evening. And for what it's worth, I'm terrible at this too. I haven't been to anyone's house for dinner since my wife died, except my sister's, but that doesn't count because Maria just hands me a dish towel and puts me to work. Something shifted in Adriana's expression. Your wife died? 4 years ago, cancer. The words came easier now, worn smooth by time and repetition. She was everything. Losing her was like losing gravity. I'm still not entirely sure how we landed. I'm so sorry. Adriana's hand moved toward his arm, then stopped, hovering in the space between comfort and propriety. Lila didn't mention, I didn't know. No reason you would. It's not exactly first conversation material. Noah gestured toward the house. Should we head inside before the girls think we've abandoned them? They walked together toward the entrance, and Noah tried not to gawk at the interior. High ceilings, art that was probably worth more than his car, furniture that looked simultaneously uncomfortable and prohibitively expensive. But there were also signs of Lila everywhere. Butterfly drawings taped to walls that probably shouldn't have tape on them. A bookshelf overflowing with nature guides and fantasy novels. A colorful throw blanket draped over a pristine white couch. I know it's a lot, Adriana said, following his gaze. The house. I bought it 5 years ago because my realtor said it was a good investment and because I wanted Lila to have space to grow. But honestly, it's too big, too cold, too much like a showroom and not enough like a home. Lila's touches help, Noah observed. The drawings, the books, those make it feel lived in. Those are new, from this week, actually. Adriana's voice went quiet. After the dance, after our lunch at school, I came home and really looked at this place. Looked at how empty it was, how sterile, how little of it reflected my daughter's existence. So I told her she could put her art anywhere she wanted, claim the space, make it ours instead of just mine. Laughter echoed from somewhere upstairs, young and bright and free. Adriana's expression softened into something tender. That's the best sound in the world, she murmured. I'd forgotten how much I missed it. They found the girls in what Adriana called Lila's butterfly room, which turned out to be a converted bedroom that had been transformed into a combination art studio, library, and natural history museum. Every wall held carefully labeled displays of butterfly species, migration maps, anatomical drawings that showed a sophistication far beyond a 9-year-old's expected skill level. A large window looked out over the gardens, and beside it stood an easel with a half-finished painting of monarchs in flight. This is incredible, Noah said, meaning it. Lila, did you do all of this? Lila nodded, pride and shyness competing on her face. Mom helped me set up the displays, and she bought me the good paints, the ones real artists use. Do you want to see my Metamorphosis series? I painted the whole life cycle from egg to butterfly. For the next hour, Noah and Haley received a comprehensive tour of Lila's collection, while Adriana watched from the doorway, her eyes bright with unshed tears as she witnessed her daughter share her passion with people who genuinely cared. Haley asked a million questions, some scientific, some imaginative. Do you think butterflies dream when they're in the chrysalis? What if the liquid they turn into has memories? And Lila answered each one with the patience of someone who'd finally found an audience that understood. Okay, Adriana finally interrupted, her voice thick with emotion she was trying to hide. Pizza's here. We can continue the butterfly lecture over dinner if everyone's okay eating in the media room. The media room turned out to be more like a small theater, with a screen that took up an entire wall and seating that was somehow both luxurious and actually comfortable. The pizza boxes were spread across a coffee table that probably cost more than Noah's monthly rent, an absurd juxtaposition that somehow worked. They settled in, girls on one couch, adults on another, and Adriana queued up a nature documentary about monarch migration. As the opening credits rolled, Noah felt the surreal weight of the moment, sitting in a billionaire's house, eating pizza, watching butterfly movies with his daughter and a family that 3 weeks ago hadn't known he existed. This is nice, Adriana said softly, and Noah realized she was looking at him instead of the screen. Having people here, having noise and mess, and she gestured at Lila and Haley, who were already debating the accuracy of the documentary's migration timeline. Having this? You should do it more often. I should do a lot of things more often. Her smile was self-deprecating. I'm trying to figure out how to be present instead of just available, how to be a mom instead of just a mother. What's the difference? A mother provides. A mom shows up. Adriana's fingers twisted in her lap. I've been very good at providing. The best schools, the best medical care, the best everything money can buy. But I haven't been good at showing up, at being there for the ordinary moments that actually matter. On screen, thousands of butterflies clustered in trees in Mexico, a living tapestry of orange and black. Lila gasped with delight, pointing out details to Haley, and Noah watched Adriana watch her daughter, saw the naked love and regret on her face. You're showing up now, Noah said quietly. That counts for something. Does it? Or is it too little too late? Adriana turned to him, and her eyes held a desperation he recognized, the fear that you failed the people who needed you most. 4 years, Noah. I have 4 years of memories with Lila, 4 years of actually being present, actually knowing my daughter. Her father left when I told him about the pregnancy, said he didn't sign up to raise a disabled child. So I threw myself into work, built an empire, told myself I was doing it for her. But really, I was just running from the terror of not being enough. Hey. Noah's hand found hers before he could think better of it, his rough fingers closing around her elegant ones. You're here now, you're trying. That's not nothing. Adriana looked down at their joined hands, and Noah started to pull away, suddenly aware that he'd crossed some invisible line. But she held on, her grip surprisingly strong. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Any of this. Motherhood, friendship, letting people close enough to see my failures. I'm much better at quarterly reports and hostile takeovers. Lucky for you, 9-year-olds don't require quarterly reports. Noah squeezed her hand gently. They just need you to show up and love them. The rest you figure out as you go. Is that how you did it? After your wife died? Noah glanced at Haley, who was laughing at something Lila had said, her face bright with uncomplicated joy. Honestly, I barely remember the first year. I was just surviving, putting one foot in front of the other, making sure Haley ate and got to school and knew she was loved. My sister Maria helped a lot, still does, and slowly, eventually, it got easier. Not better, exactly, but easier. We found our rhythm. What was she like, your wife? The question should have hurt, but instead it felt like an offering, like Adriana was trying to know him the way he was trying to know her. She was light. Not in an unrealistic way, not like those people who are aggressively positive about everything. But she found joy in small things. Haley's laugh, good coffee, the way rain sounded on windows. She made ordinary moments feel significant. You must miss her terribly. Every day. Noah's thumb traced absent circles on the back of Adriana's hand, a gesture of comfort that felt natural despite how new this connection was. But I'm also grateful we had the time we did. Grateful she gave me Haley. Grateful for the lessons she taught me about being present, being kind, being human. Adriana was quiet for a long moment, watching the butterflies on screen cluster in their winter sanctuary. I think she'd be proud of you, of the man you've become, the father you are. I hope so. Noah realized he was still holding her hand and started to release it, but Adriana's fingers tightened. Don't. Her voice was barely audible. Please, it's been a long time since anyone just... She stopped, swallowed hard. I'm not good at asking for things, for help or comfort or connection. I'm good at taking what I need in boardrooms and negotiations. But this, just sitting here holding someone's hand while watching a movie. I don't know how to ask for this. You don't have to ask, Noah said simply. I'm here. They sat like that, hands joined, while the documentary played and their daughters fell into the easy intimacy of new best friends. At some point, Adriana's head drifted to rest against Noah's shoulder, a gesture so unconscious he didn't think she realized she'd done it. He stayed very still, afraid to break whatever spell had woven itself around them in the darkness of her theater room. When the first documentary ended, Lila begged for another, and Adriana agreed with a laugh that sounded young and free. They watched a second film, and then a third, the evening stretching into night while pizza grew cold and comfort grew warm. Haley eventually fell asleep curled against Lila's wheelchair, and Lila's eyes started to droop during the final migration sequence. I should get them home, Noah said reluctantly, acutely aware that he didn't want this evening to end, didn't want to release Adriana's hand or leave the cocoon of warmth they'd built in this ridiculous theater room. Or you could stay. Adriana sat up, her hair mussed, her eyes soft in the blue light from the screen. We have guest rooms, plenty of space, and the girls clearly don't want the night to end. It was a terrible idea. Noah knew it was a terrible idea. Staying overnight at a billionaire's house, blurring the lines between friendship and something more, letting himself get comfortable in a world that wasn't his and could never really be his, all of it screamed disaster. Okay, he heard himself say. Adriana's smile was like sunrise. Really? Really, but I'm warning you, I'm useless before coffee. I have an espresso machine that cost more than most cars. I think we can manage coffee. She stood, carefully so as not to wake Lila, and offered Noah her hand. Come on, I'll show you where everything is. They woke the girls gently, explained the sleepover plan to squeals of delight from Haley, and Adriana led them through the labyrinth of her house to the guest wing. The room she showed Noah to was bigger than his entire apartment, with its own bathroom and a view of the city lights spread below like scattered stars. There are clothes in the dresser if you need them, Adriana said, hovering in the doorway. Previous owner left a bunch of stuff behind. Should be something that fits. Adriana. Noah turned to face her fully. Thank you. For tonight. For letting us into your home, your life. This meant a lot to Haley, to me. It meant everything to me. She stepped closer, and Noah could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive that made him think of butterfly wings and summer rain. I haven't felt this normal, this human, in years. Maybe ever. You do that somehow. Make me feel like I'm more than just my company, my money, my mistakes. You are more than those things. When I'm with you, I almost believe that. Her hand lifted, fingers trembling slightly as they traced the line of his jaw. Noah, Whatever she'd been about to say was interrupted by Lila's voice calling from down the hall. Mom, can you help me get ready for bed? Adriana's hand dropped and she stepped back, her expression caught between frustration and relief. I should go. Be with your daughter. Noah smiled, even though every nerve in his body was screaming at him to pull her back, to finish whatever moment they'd almost had. We'll see you in the morning. She nodded and left, and Noah stood alone in his guest room, trying to calm his racing heart and make sense of the electricity that sparked every time Adriana Pearson looked at him like he was something precious instead of something ordinary. He found the promised clothes, designer labels he didn't recognize but fabric that felt like dreams, and changed mechanically, his mind replaying the evening on loop. The way Adriana had held his hand, the way she'd rested her head on his shoulder, the way she'd looked at him just now, like he was the answer to a question she hadn't known she was asking. This was dangerous territory. He was a janitor. She was a billionaire. They lived in different worlds, operated by different rules, and no amount of butterfly movies and shared pizza could bridge that fundamental gap. People like him didn't end up with people like her except in fairy tales, and Noah had learned the hard way that life wasn't a fairy tale. But then he remembered Lila's face at the dance, the way she'd whispered, "I'm dancing," with such profound wonder. Remembered Adriana crying in the school hallway, admitting she didn't know her own daughter. Remembered the weight of her hand in his, the trust implicit in that simple touch. Maybe this wasn't about fairy tales. Maybe it was just about two broken people trying to do better, trying to heal, trying to believe that kindness and connection could rewrite the stories they'd been telling themselves about who they were and what they deserved. A soft knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Noah opened the door to find Adriana standing there, now in pajamas that were somehow both modest and devastating, soft cotton that made her look younger, more vulnerable. "Hi," she said, and her voice carried a tremor he hadn't heard before. "I put Lila to bed, and I needed to finish what I was saying earlier. Adriana, please, let me say this before I lose my nerve." She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders like she was walking into a hostile board meeting. "I haven't felt anything for anyone since Lila was born. I shut down that part of myself because feeling things meant being vulnerable, and I couldn't afford vulnerability when I had a child to protect and a company to build. But tonight, sitting with you, holding your hand, feeling like maybe I wasn't alone in all of this. Tonight, I felt something." Noah's heart hammered against his ribs. "What did you feel?" "Hope." The word came out broken, desperate. Hope that maybe I'm not too damaged to connect with someone. Hope that maybe there's room in my life for more than just work and guilt and trying to make up for lost time. Hope that... She stopped, her hands twisting together. "God, I'm making a mess of this. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a person who feels things and admits it." "You're doing fine," Noah said gently, even though his own emotions were rioting, even though he knew they were standing on the edge of something that could either heal them or shatter them completely. "No, I'm not. I'm terrified." Adriana's eyes met his, and they were bright with unshed tears. "I'm terrified because I barely know you, but I want to know you. I'm terrified because you've shown me more genuine kindness in a week than most people have shown me in a lifetime, and I don't know what to do with that. I'm terrified because when I look at you, I see someone who could matter, really matter, and I haven't let anyone matter in so long I've forgotten how." Noah stood frozen, torn between the part of him that wanted to pull her close and promise her everything, and the part of him that knew promises were dangerous, that hope could be a cruelty when reality inevitably crushed it. "I'm falling for you," Adriana whispered, and the confession hung between them like a held breath. "I know it's fast and probably foolish and definitely complicated, but I'm falling for you, Noah Carter, and I needed you to know that before I spent the whole night lying awake wishing I'd been brave enough to say it." The words hit Noah like a tidal wave, sweeping away every rational objection, every careful defense he'd built around his heart. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and cupped her face in his hands with a gentleness that belied the chaos roaring through his chest. "I'm falling for you too," he said, and the truth of it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "I didn't want to. I wasn't looking for this. But you're extraordinary, Adriana, not because of your money or your success, but because of your honesty, your vulnerability, the way you're fighting so hard to be better for Lila, the way you looked at me tonight like I was someone worth knowing. You are worth knowing." Her hands came up to cover his, holding them against her face like he was the only solid thing in a world that had tilted sideways. "You're the most worth-knowing person I've ever met." They stood like that, foreheads nearly touching, breathing the same air, balanced on the knife's edge between restraint and recklessness. Noah knew he should step back, should set boundaries, should protect both of them from the inevitable complications of a relationship that defied every social and economic logic. But he also knew that some moments demanded courage more than caution, that some connections were worth the risk of destruction because the alternative, never knowing what they could become, was a kind of death all its own. "Stay with me tonight," Adriana whispered. I don't mean I just mean stay here, in this room, in this doorway. Talk to me until the sun comes up. Help me remember how to be human." So Noah did. He led her into the guest room and they sat together on the enormous bed, backs against the headboard, not touching except where their hands joined in the space between them. And they talked through the darkness, trading stories about loss and fear and hope, about the weight of single parenthood and the terror of loving imperfectly, about butterflies and migration and the strange paths that bring broken people together. When dawn finally crept through the windows, painting the room in shades of gold and pink, Adriana had fallen asleep against Noah's shoulder, her breathing deep and even, her face peaceful in a way he suspected was rare. He sat very still, afraid to wake her, watching the sunrise paint new light across a world that felt suddenly full of impossible possibility. And somewhere down the hall, two girls slept tangled together, already bound by a friendship that would carry them both toward futures brighter than either could have imagined alone. Adriana woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and the disorienting sensation of warmth against her side. For a confused moment, she couldn't place where she was or why her neck ached from an awkward angle, and then memory flooded back in a rush that made her breath catch. She'd fallen asleep in the guest room, against Noah's shoulder, after confessing feelings she'd barely admitted to herself. She sat up carefully, mortified to find him still there, still awake from the looks of it, watching the sunrise with an expression of quiet contemplation. His shirt was wrinkled from where she'd been pressed against him, and there was a mark on his shoulder from her earring, evidence of intimacy that felt both too much and not nearly enough. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice rough with sleep. "I didn't mean to fall asleep on you. You should have woken me." Noah turned to look at her, and his smile was gentle, absent of judgment. "You needed the rest. And honestly, I didn't mind." "You stayed awake all night?" "Couldn't sleep." He stretched, wincing slightly. "Too much thinking, too much processing, too much wondering if last night actually happened or if I dreamed the whole thing." Adriana's stomach twisted with anxiety. Morning light had a way of making night confessions seem reckless, exposing, dangerous. "About what I said, don't." Noah's hand found hers, the same easy gesture from the night before. "Don't take it back, please. I meant what I said too, and I don't want to pretend it didn't happen just because the sun came up. But we should talk about what it means, the logistics, the complications, the fact that we're from completely different worlds." "We should," Noah agreed. "But maybe after coffee, and after we check on the girls, and after we've both had a chance to brush our teeth and pretend we're functional adults." Despite everything, Adriana laughed. "You're very practical for someone who just spent the night in emotional confession territory." "Someone has to be, and you look like you're about 3 seconds away from convincing yourself that everything you felt last night was just exhaustion and temporary insanity." He knew her. Somehow, impossibly, after just days of knowing each other, he could read her defensive patterns, the way she retreated into logic when emotions threatened to overwhelm. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like relief. "I'm good at talking myself out of things," she admitted. "I know. That's why I'm not letting you." Noah stood and offered his hand, pulling her up from the bed. "Come on. Let's go find our daughters and make breakfast and be normal for a while before we tackle the complicated stuff." They found Lila and Haley already awake in Lila's butterfly room, sprawled across beanbag chairs with sketch pads, drawing elaborate butterfly hybrids and giggling over which imagined species would be most ridiculous in real life. "Morning, Mom," Lila called out, her face radiant with the kind of joy Adriana was still learning to recognize as normal, not exceptional. "Haley's teaching me how to draw cartoon butterflies. Look, this one has sunglasses." Adriana moved to examine the drawing, feeling Noah's presence warm at her back. "That's very cool, baby. Very fashion-forward butterfly aesthetic." "Can we make pancakes?" Haley asked, looking between the adults with the studied casualness of a child testing boundaries. "Dad makes really good ones, and Lila says you have like a professional kitchen." "I have a kitchen I never used that a designer insisted was essential," Adriana corrected. "But yes, pancakes sound perfect." The four of them migrated to the kitchen, and Adriana watched Noah take in the space. Commercial-grade appliances, marble countertops, a refrigerator that probably cost more than most cars. He didn't comment on the excess, just rolled up his sleeves and started opening cabinets with the easy competence of someone comfortable in any kitchen, wealthy or otherwise. "Flowers up there," Adriana directed, pointing to a cabinet she'd probably opened twice in 5 years. "I think. Or it might be in the pantry. I'm not entirely sure what's where." "You really don't cook, do you?" Noah's tone was teasing, warm. "I have people who cook. Or I order in. Or I forget to eat until someone reminds me." Adriana felt her cheeks heat with embarrassment. "I know that sounds terrible. Privileged and disconnected and... Hey!" Noah paused in his search for mixing bowls to look at her directly. "No judgment, remember? We all have different skills. You run a billion-dollar company. I make pancakes. Both are valuable. One is significantly more valuable to hungry children on Sunday morning." "Fair point." He finally located a mixing bowl and set it on the counter. "Okay, sous chefs, I'm going to need help. Haley, you're on egg duty. Lila, think you can measure out flour?" What followed was the most chaotic and wonderful cooking experience Adriana had ever witnessed. Flour ended up on every surface, including Haley's nose. Eggshells had to be fished out of the batter twice. The girls insisted on adding chocolate chips in quantities that seemed structurally unsound. And through it all, Noah orchestrated with patient humor, teaching both girls technique while encouraging their creativity, never once getting frustrated with the mess. Adriana watched from her position at the kitchen island, ostensibly there to help, but mostly just observing this small masterclass in present parenting. This was what she'd been missing. Not the cooking specifically, but the ordinary intimacy of it, the teamwork, the laughter, the way Noah ruffled Haley's hair when she cracked an egg perfectly, the way he'd positioned Lila's wheelchair at the perfect height to participate fully. "Mom, are you crying?" Lila's concerned voice cut through her reverie. Adriana swiped quickly at her eyes. "No, sweetheart. Just... the flour in the air is making my eyes water." But Noah met her gaze across the kitchen, and the understanding in his eyes said he knew the truth. She was crying because she was grieving all the moments like this she'd missed, all the Sunday mornings she'd spent in her office instead of her kitchen, all the ordinary magic she'd sacrificed in pursuit of extraordinary success. Breakfast was served on the back patio overlooking the infinity pool and the valley beyond. The pancakes were slightly burned on one side and loaded with so many chocolate chips they barely qualified as breakfast food, but they were the best thing Adriana had tasted in years, because they came with laughter and syrup-sticky fingers and the easy contentment of people who belonged together. "This is nice," Lila said quietly, echoing her mother's words from the night before. "Having people here. Feeling like a family." The word hung in the morning air, heavy with meaning. Adriana glanced at Noah, saw him freeze with his coffee cup halfway to his mouth, saw the same mixture of hope and terror she felt reflected in his expression. "We are like a family," Haley declared with the certainty of children everywhere. "We should do this every weekend, sleepovers and pancakes and butterfly movies." "Haley," Noah started, his voice careful. "Why not?" Lila turned to her mother, her eyes bright with hope that was almost painful to witness. "Mom, can Noah and Haley come over every weekend?" Adriana felt the weight of the question, understood that her answer would set precedent, would tell her daughter whether this connection, whatever it was becoming, was temporary or something they could build on. And standing there in the morning light with chocolate chip pancake crumbs on her expensive patio furniture and happiness warm in her chest, she knew there was only one answer she wanted to give. "I think that sounds wonderful," she said, meeting Noah's eyes across the table. "If Noah and Haley want to, of course." "Yes!" Haley pumped her fist in the air. "Dad, say yes. Please, please, please." Noah's smile was slow, cautious, but genuine. Yeah, I think we'd like that." The girls erupted in celebration, already planning next weekend's activities, but Adriana barely heard them. She was too focused on the way Noah was looking at her, like she'd just given him something precious, like her yes meant more than weekend plans. After breakfast, while the girls went back to their drawing, Noah helped Adriana clean up the kitchen. They worked in comfortable silence, finding a rhythm that felt practiced despite its newness. He washed, she dried, both of them navigating around each other with an awareness that made every accidental brush of hands feel electric. "About last night," Adriana said finally, when the last dish was put away, and they had run out of tasks to delay the conversation. About what I said, what you said, we should probably talk about what that means in practical terms. Noah leaned against the counter, his expression serious. You're scared. Terrified, she admitted. Noah, I haven't dated since before Lila was born. I don't know how to do this. And there are so many complications. My company, my schedule, the fact that you work at Lila's school, the attention we'd get if people found out. If people found out that we're what exactly? Noah's voice was gentle but firm. Friends? More than friends? Because right now we haven't defined what this is, and maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't need to have it all figured out today. I'm not good with undefined, Adriana said, her hands twisting together. I'm good with plans and strategies and clear objectives. This, whatever's happening between us, it doesn't fit into any framework I understand. Then maybe it's time to learn a new framework. Noah closed the distance between them, his hands settling gently on her shoulders. Adriana, I'm not asking you to have everything figured out. I'm just asking you to be honest about what you want. Do you want to explore this thing between us, see where it goes? Or do you want to write it off as a moment of vulnerability and go back to being polite acquaintances? The question was so direct it took her breath away. In her world, people danced around desires, negotiated in subtext, protected themselves with layers of plausible deniability. But Noah just asked, simple and clear, giving her the choice without trying to influence it. I want to explore it, she whispered. God help me. I want to see where this goes. But Noah, you have to understand, my life is complicated. I have board meetings and business trips and a daughter who needs more of my time than I've been giving her. I can't promise you traditional dating or normal relationship progression or any of the things you probably deserve. I don't want traditional. Noah's thumb traced gentle circles on her shoulder. I want honest. I want present. I want someone who's willing to try even when it's scary. And that's you, Adriana. You're trying so hard to be better, to do better, and that's everything. What if I fail? What if I screw this up the way I've screwed up everything else? Then we figure it out together. His hands slid down her arms to take her hands, holding them between their bodies. I'm not expecting perfection. I'm just expecting effort. And maybe, if we're lucky, some of those weekend pancake mornings? Adriana felt tears threaten again, overwhelmed by his steadiness, his willingness to meet her in all her broken uncertainty. I don't understand why you'd want this. Want me. I'm a disaster, Noah. A workaholic billionaire who didn't even know her own daughter ate lunch alone. You could do so much better. Could I? Noah's smile was sad, knowing. Because from where I'm standing, you're a woman who canceled a $3 billion deal to be there for her daughter, who admitted her failures instead of hiding behind excuses, who's learning to be vulnerable even though it terrifies you. That's not a disaster, Adriana. That's courage. You see me differently than I see myself. Good. Maybe it's time you started seeing yourself through kinder eyes. He pulled her closer, and she went willingly, letting herself lean into his strength. We're both broken, Adriana. We've both failed people we love, made choices we regret. But maybe broken people who are trying to heal are exactly what each other needs. She buried her face against his chest, breathing in the scent of him, laundry detergent and coffee and something essentially Noah that made her feel safe in a way she couldn't remember feeling before. I'm going to disappoint you. Eventually, inevitably, I'm going to choose work over you or forget something important or revert to the person I was before all of this. Probably, Noah agreed, and she felt his words rumble through his chest. And I'm probably going to get insecure about our different worlds, or overprotective of Haley, or retreat into myself when things get hard. We're both going to mess up. That's what people do. The question is whether we're willing to forgive each other and try again. That sounds exhausting. It sounds like love. The word stopped her heart. Love. He'd said it so casually, like it was a foregone conclusion instead of a terrifying precipice. She pulled back to look at him, searching his face for signs of panic or regret, but found only calm certainty. We barely know each other, she protested weakly. And yet here we are. Noah cupped her face, his callous thumbs gentle against her cheeks. I'm not saying I'm in love with you right now, today. I'm saying that's the direction I'm heading, and I wanted you to know that. To understand that this isn't casual for me. You're not casual for me. Adriana's breath shuddered out. You're not casual for me either. Then let's be uncasual together. Let's do weekend pancakes and butterfly movies and actual dates when we can manage them. Let's introduce each other to our respective disasters and see if we can build something stronger than either of us could build alone. I want that. The admission came easier this time, the truth of it settling into her bones. I want all of that. I'm still terrified, but I want it. Good. Noah kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her ache. Being terrified means you're brave enough to try anyway. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other and morning light, until Haley's voice called from upstairs, asking if they could go swimming. Real life reasserted itself, children and schedules and the practical demands of Sunday afternoon, but something fundamental had shifted between them. They'd named the thing growing in the space between them, given it room to breathe and become. The rest of Sunday passed in a blur of pool time and more butterfly documentaries and Adriana teaching both girls the basics of her company's flagship product, adaptive technology that she'd originally developed hoping it might help Lila interact with the world more easily. Noah watched her with pride as she transformed from uncertain mother to confident CEO, explaining complex concepts in ways that made both 9-year-olds gasp with excitement about neural interfaces and accessibility software. You're amazing, he said quietly, when the girls had wandered off to examine the pool's filtration system with the intensity of junior engineers. Adriana startled, unused to compliments about her work that weren't transactional. I'm just explaining basic tech concepts. No, you're showing them that technology can change lives, that innovation matters, that one person with a vision can make the world more accessible for millions. Noah's eyes were warm with admiration. That's not just amazing, that's world-changing. I started the company for Lila, Adriana admitted, wanted to build tools that would let her interact with technology as easily as any other child. But then it grew and grew, and I got so caught up in the business side, the funding and scaling and market share, that I forgot the original mission, forgot who I was building it for. You can get back to that. Use your platform to make real change, not just profit. Is it terrible that I don't know how anymore? That I've been playing corporate games for so long, I've forgotten what purpose-driven work looks like? No. Noah's hand found hers, familiar now, grounding. It's honest. And honesty is the first step toward change. That night, when it was finally time for Noah and Haley to leave, the goodbyes felt weighted with significance. Haley hugged Lila fiercely, making her promise to text every day. Lila held on, like she was afraid to let go, afraid this magic weekend would evaporate and leave her alone again. Next weekend, Adriana reminded her daughter gently. They'll be back next weekend. You promise? Lila looked at Noah, her eyes vulnerable. Promise, superstar. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. At the car, Adriana walked Noah to the driver's side while the girls said their final goodbyes. Thank you, she said softly, for staying, for talking, for not running away when I showed you all my broken pieces. Thank you for showing me. Noah pulled her close, and she went into his arms like coming home. Text me this week? Let me know how you're doing? Every day, she promised, then laughed at herself. God, I sound like Haley, but yes, every day. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet and full of promise. It was their first kiss, tentative and careful, but it held within it the weight of everything they'd confessed and everything they were choosing to build. When they pulled apart, Adriana felt dizzy with hope and fear in equal measure. Drive safe, she managed. Always do. Noah climbed into his car, where Haley was already buckled in with a knowing smirk on her face. He started the engine, then rolled down the window. Hey, Adriana. Yeah? This thing we're doing? It's going to work. I don't know how yet, but it's going to work. She watched them drive away, standing in her circular driveway until the taillights disappeared, then turned to find Lila watching her from the doorway with an expression of such naked hope, it nearly broke her heart. You like him, Lila said. Not a question, an observation. I do, Adriana admitted, walking back to her daughter. I really do. Is that okay with you? Are you kidding? It's the best thing ever. Lila's smile was radiant. He's good, Mom. He's really good. And he makes you smile like you're actually happy instead of just pretending. I haven't been pretending. Mom. Lila's voice was gentle, far too wise for 9 years old. I know you've been trying. I know you've been sad and guilty and working really hard to be better. But with Noah, you're not trying. You're just happy. There's a difference. Adriana knelt beside her daughter's wheelchair, taking her small hands in hers. You're right. There is a difference. And baby, I want you to know Noah and Haley coming into our lives doesn't change how much I love you or how committed I am to being present. You're still my priority. Always. I know, Mom, but it's okay to have other people too. It's okay to be happy with someone who isn't me. Lila squeezed her mother's hands. I want you to be happy, really happy. Not just mom happy or successful happy, but like heart happy. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You're just noticing more now. Adriana laughed through tears and pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and childhood and all the moments she'd almost missed. I love you so much, Lila, my beautiful, brilliant, wise, beyond your years daughter. I love you too, Mom, and I love that Noah and Haley are ours now, like a bonus family. A bonus family, Adriana repeated, the phrase settling into her chest like a promise. I like that. Monday morning brought reality crashing back with the subtlety of a freight train. Adriana arrived at her office to find her executive team in crisis mode. The Tokyo deal she'd abandoned had predictably fallen apart. Their primary competitor had poached 2 of their top engineers, and the board was demanding an emergency meeting to discuss her sudden and unexplained absence. I can reschedule the butterfly movie night, Adriana had texted Noah during her 3rd consecutive meeting. This week is imploding. His response came 20 minutes later. Or you could handle the implosion efficiently and keep your commitment. Lila needs you to show up, especially when it's hard. He was right, and that made it both better and worse. Adriana threw herself into damage control with a ferocity that reminded her why she'd built her empire in the first place. She was brilliant at this, at strategy and negotiation and turning disasters into opportunities. By Wednesday, she'd not only salvaged the Tokyo situation, but positioned her company for an even better deal. The poached engineers were replaced by hungrier, more innovative talent. And the board meeting became a platform to announce her new initiative, redirecting 30% of company profits toward accessibility innovation and making their core technology available at cost to schools and disability organizations. You're going to bankrupt us, her CFO warned. No, Adriana corrected, thinking of Lila explaining migration patterns, of Noah's faith that purpose mattered more than profit. I'm going to remind us why we exist, and if the board doesn't like it, they can vote me out. They didn't vote her out. Instead, something unexpected happened. The announcement went viral. Tech journalists praised her vision, disability advocates championed her commitment, and their stock price actually climbed on the wave of positive press. Adriana watched it unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and cynicism. She'd made the decision for the right reasons, but the market's approval felt hollow somehow, like they'd turned genuine purpose into performative capitalism. You can't control how people respond, Noah said Thursday night when she called him from her office, exhausted and frustrated. You can only control your intentions, and your intentions are good, Adriana. Don't let the cynics take that away from you. I missed Lila's bedtime 3 nights this week. But you made it home for 2. That's 2 more than you used to manage. Why are you always so reasonable? Because someone has to be, and you're too busy being brilliant and stressed. She could hear the smile in his voice. Take a breath. Remember that progress isn't perfection. And get some sleep because you're seeing us Saturday, and I need you coherent enough to lose at the board game Lila's been planning all week. Friday brought unexpected complication in the form of Marcus Webb, her VP of Operations, and the closest thing she had to a friend in the company. He cornered her after the weekly strategy meeting, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Are you dating someone? He asked without preamble. Adriana felt her defenses slam into place. Why would you ask that? Because you're different this week, distracted but also more focused, if that makes sense. And because someone on the board mentioned seeing you with a man at Lila's school. Marcus held up his hands. I'm not judging. I'm happy for you, actually. But you need to be careful, Adriana. The board is already questioning your judgment after Tokyo. If they think you're making personal decisions that affect company operations, what I do in my personal life is none of the board's business. In theory, no. In practice? Marcus sighed. You're the face of this company. Your decisions, personal or professional, reflect on all of us. I'm just saying, be strategic about this. Don't let whoever this guy is become ammunition for people who want to see you fail. Adriana wanted to rage at the injustice of it. Male CEOs dated whoever they wanted without scrutiny, but she was expected to remain some kind of corporate Vestal virgin, devoted only to shareholder value. But she also knew Marcus was trying to help, warning her about dangers he could see that she was too inside to recognize. His name is Noah, she said finally. He's a good man, a single father, someone who's teaching me how to be present in my daughter's life. And I'm not giving him up to appease board members who wouldn't recognize real value if it bit them. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then smiled. Good for you. Just be ready for the gossip. And maybe give me a heads up before you bring him to any company events so I can run interference. Saturday morning, Adriana woke early with butterflies in her stomach that had nothing to do with Lila's favorite insects. She caught herself checking her reflection multiple times, changing clothes 3 times, acting like a teenager instead of a 42-year-old CEO. Lila watched from her doorway with barely concealed amusement. You're nervous, her daughter observed. I'm not nervous. I'm just totally nervous. It's okay, Mom. It's cute. Cute. Adriana Pearson, who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, was cute because she was nervous about Noah Carter seeing her in jeans and a t-shirt instead of her usual business armor. When he arrived, right on time, because of course he was, Adriana felt her breath catch. He looked good in his weekend casual clothes, relaxed and comfortable in his own skin in a way she envied. Haley bounded out of the car ahead of him, already calling for Lila, and suddenly it was chaos and laughter and the comfortable disorder of children and adults navigating shared space. They made pancakes again. It was becoming a tradition, and Adriana found herself actually helping this time instead of just observing. She burned the first batch spectacularly, turned the second batch into abstract expressionist shapes, but finally managed something approaching actual pancakes by the 3rd attempt. You're a quick learner, Noah said, bumping her hip with his as he flipped a perfect circle onto the griddle. I'm motivated. Can't have you being the only functional cook in this relationship. The word, relationship, hung in the air between them, and Adriana held her breath, suddenly uncertain if she'd named something that wasn't ready to be named. But Noah just grinned. Relationship, huh? Is that what we're calling this? Unless you have a better term? No, I like that one. He turned off the stove and faced her fully, his hand settling on her waist. Adriana Pearson, are we officially in a relationship? I think we might be, she whispered, feeling young and terrified and exhilarated. Is that okay? That's more than okay. He kissed her, soft and sweet, and she tasted maple syrup and promise. That's perfect. The board game Lila had planned turned out to be an elaborate butterfly-themed adventure of her own design, complete with hand-drawn game pieces and rules that changed approximately every 5 minutes. They played for hours, laughing at the chaotic gameplay, and Adriana felt something in her chest uncurl that she hadn't realized was clenched tight. This was what healing looked like, this messy, imperfect, joyful thing called family. As evening approached, the girls asked if they could camp out in the backyard. Sleeping bags and flashlights, and the kind of adventure that only made sense to 9-year-olds. Adriana started to refuse, citing safety concerns and inappropriate temperatures and a dozen other worries, but Noah touched her arm gently. Let them, he said quietly. We'll set up on the patio where we can see them. They'll be safe. So they set up a tent in the backyard while Adriana watched from the patio with a glass of wine, and Noah joined her once the girls were settled with their flashlights and ghost stories. You did good, he said, settling beside her on the outdoor couch, letting them have their adventure. I'm trying to let go of control. It's harder than it sounds. Everything worthwhile is hard. Noah pulled her against his side, and she went gratefully, tucking herself into the solid warmth of him. But you're doing it. That's what matters. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the tent glow with flashlight shadows, listening to the distant sound of girl laughter carried on evening air. Stars began to appear overhead, and Adriana tried to remember the last time she'd just sat outside and watched the sky change. "I told my executive team about you," she said suddenly. "Well, one of them. And apparently the board knows something's going on. They're concerned about my judgment." She felt Noah tense beside her. "Concerned how?" "Concerned that I'm making personal decisions that affect professional performance. Concerned that the CEO is dating someone outside her usual social circle. Concerned that I'm becoming unpredictable." She turned to look at him, needing him to understand. "They didn't say it directly, but the implication was clear. Date within my class or don't date at all." "And what did you tell them?" "That they could take their classist's concerns and—" She stopped, shook her head. "I defended you, defended us. But Noah, this is going to get complicated. The media attention, the speculation, the judgment—" "I can handle judgment," Noah interrupted, his voice steady. "What I can't handle is you being ashamed of me." "I'm not—" Adriana sat up, forcing him to look at her. "God, Noah, I'm not ashamed. I'm terrified. Terrified that the scrutiny will drive you away. Terrified that you'll realize dating a billionaire CEO isn't worth the headache. Terrified that I'm going to lose this thing we're building before we even figure out what it is." "Hey!" Noah cupped her face, forcing her to focus on him instead of her spiral of worry. "I'm not going anywhere. Yes, it's going to be complicated. Yes, people are going to have opinions. But unless you're telling me you want out, I'm all in. Complications and all. You say that now." "I say that now, and I'll keep saying it." His thumbs stroked her cheeks. "Adriana, I spent 4 years barely surviving after Sarah died. 4 years going through the motions, being present for Haley but not really living. And then I met your daughter, and then I met you, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to look forward to something, to want something beyond just getting through the day. I'm not giving that up because some board members think I'm not good enough for you." "They're wrong," Adriana said fiercely. You're extraordinary, Noah. The way you love, the way you see people, the way you show up, that's worth more than every dollar in my account." "Then trust that. Trust us. Trust that we can figure out the complicated parts together." She kissed him then, pouring into it all the fear and hope and desperate longing she'd been trying to articulate. He kissed her back with equal intensity, his hands sliding into her hair, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, just them, just now, just the possibility of something beautiful rising from the ruins of their separate griefs. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adriana rested her forehead against his. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered. "It's too soon and too fast, and I don't even know if I remember how to love someone, but I'm falling anyway, and it's terrifying." "I'm falling too." Noah's voice was rough with emotion. "Have been since you walked into that gymnasium and cried watching your daughter dance. Have been since you admitted you didn't know her and then fought like hell to change that. Have been since you chose presence over profit and vulnerability over perfection." "So what do we do now?" "Now?" Noah smiled against her lips. "Now we keep falling. Together." From the tent in the backyard came a shriek of laughter, and both adults turned to look. The flashlight shadows showed both girls sitting up, clearly not even pretending to sleep yet, lost in whatever story they were telling each other. "They're going to be impossible to settle down," Adriana murmured. "Probably." Noah pulled her back against his side. "But that's a problem for later. Right now, let's just be here. Present. Together." So Adriana let herself be held, let herself exist in the moment without planning the next one, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this slice of happiness she'd found in the most unexpected place. Above them, stars wheeled through their ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggles and human hearts. But down here, in a backyard filled with laughter and fireflies and the tentative beginnings of love, two broken people held each other and dared to imagine futures brighter than their pasts. The night stretched on, warm and infinite, and for the first time in years, Adriana Pearson wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or board meetings or the million ways she needed to be better. She was just thinking about the man beside her, the daughter in the tent ahead of her, and the strange, terrifying, wonderful journey they'd all stumbled onto together. And somewhere in her chest, in the space she'd kept locked and guarded for so long, Something that felt dangerously like hope began finally to bloom. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both fragile and inevitable, like watching butterflies emerge from chrysalises, beautiful and terrifying because transformation could fail at any moment. Noah and Adriana navigated their new relationship with the careful attention of people who understood that what they were building mattered too much to rush or break through carelessness. But the world, as it turned out, had other plans. The photo appeared on a tech gossip site 3 weeks after that starlit evening in Adriana's backyard. Someone had captured them at a coffee shop near Lila's school. Noah's hand covering Adriana's across the table, both of them laughing at something, completely unaware they were being documented. The headline read, "Tech billionaire Adriana Pearson's surprising new romance. Who is Mystery Man?" Within hours, it had spread everywhere. Financial news sites speculated about how her distraction might affect company performance. Lifestyle magazines dug into Noah's background, turning his wife's death and his career change into tragedy porn. The worst ones questioned his motives, suggesting he was a gold digger targeting a vulnerable single mother. Adriana saw the articles during a board meeting, her phone buzzing incessantly until she finally checked it. The blood drained from her face as she scrolled through increasingly invasive coverage, and her CFO cleared his throat meaningfully. "I think we need to discuss the elephant in the room," he said, his tone suggesting this was an intervention rather than a conversation. "These articles about your personal life are affecting our stock price. Investors are concerned about your focus, your judgment." "My personal life is none of their business," Adriana cut in, her voice cold. "When your personal life becomes public spectacle, it becomes their business." Her VP of Marketing, Ellen, pulled up a presentation on the conference room screen, graphs showing stock fluctuations, social media sentiment analysis, focus group responses. "Look at these numbers. Investors are nervous. They're questioning whether you're making emotional decisions instead of strategic ones. I canceled one trip to Tokyo. One. And I've more than made up for it with the accessibility initiative that's getting us the best press we've had in years." "That's not the point," her CFO insisted. "The point is perception. And right now the perception is that you're prioritizing a man over your company." Adriana felt rage build in her chest, hot and familiar. This was the trap wealthy women lived in, damned for being too focused on career, damned for having personal lives, expected to be superhuman without any of the grace afforded to their male counterparts. She thought of every male CEO who dated models or married employees or had very public affairs, none of whom had faced this level of scrutiny. "So what are you suggesting?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "That I break up with him to appease investors? That I apologize for having a personal life?" "We're suggesting you consider the optics," Ellen said carefully. "Maybe keep things quiet for a while. No public appearances together, no social media, nothing that feeds the gossip cycle. Let it die down naturally." "That's not keeping things quiet. That's hiding." Adriana stood, gathering her materials. "And I'm not interested in hiding relationships that make me and my daughter happy just because investors are uncomfortable with the help dating above his station." "Adriana's, this meeting is over." She walked out, her heels clicking sharply against marble floors, her heart hammering with fury and fear in equal measure. Because the truth was, they weren't entirely wrong. She was distracted. She was making choices she wouldn't have made 6 months ago. She was putting relationship and family before the company that had been her whole identity for nearly a decade, and she wasn't sure she regretted it. She called Noah from her car, her hands shaking as she drove toward his apartment without conscious decision. "Did you see the articles?" "Yeah." His voice was tight. "My phone's been ringing off the hook. Reporters wanting quotes, my sister freaking out. Even my old engineering firm called asking if I needed legal representation." "I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Don't." Noah's tone was firm. "Don't apologize for other people being invasive. And definitely don't spiral into the 'I told you so' routine. We knew this might happen. But it's one thing to know it theoretically, and another to see your life dissected by strangers." Adriana turned onto his street, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed. "My board wants me to hide you, keep us quiet until the gossip dies down, treat you like a secret I'm ashamed of." Silence stretched across the line, and in it Adriana heard all her fears crystallizing. He was going to end it. He was going to tell her it wasn't worth it, that he couldn't put himself or Haley through this media circus, that she should have been honest about how brutal this exposure would be. "Adriana," Noah said finally, "where are you right now?" "Outside your apartment. I know I should have called first, but I needed to see you." "Come up. We'll talk face to face." She climbed the stairs to his third-floor walk-up, acutely aware of the contrast between his modest building and her estate in the hills. The articles had made much of that gap, calling it everything from class tourism to billionaire slumming. Every word had been designed to make their relationship seem tawdry, transactional, temporary. Noah opened the door before she could knock, and the concern on his face nearly broke her. He pulled her inside, into his small living room with its second-hand furniture and Haley's drawings taped to walls that needed repainting, and somehow this place felt more like home than her glass palace ever had. "Tell me what you need," he said, holding her at arm's length to study her face. "I need you to tell me we can survive this, that we're strong enough to weather the gossip and the judgment and my board trying to manipulate me into choosing them over us." "We can survive it," Noah said without hesitation. "But Adriana, I need to know, do you want to? Because if you're having second thoughts, if this is all too much—" "No." She grabbed his shirt, pulled him closer. "No, I'm not having second thoughts about us. I'm having rage about a system that punishes women for having personal lives. I'm having terror about the spotlight on you and Haley. I'm having doubt about my ability to protect the people I love from the consequences of loving me. But I'm not having second thoughts about you." Something in Noah's expression softened. "Okay. Then we figure out how to handle this together. We don't hide, we don't apologize, we just live our lives and let the gossip eat itself eventually." Your board doesn't get a vote in your personal life." Noah cupped her face, forcing her to focus on him instead of her spiral. "Yes, you're a CEO. Yes, you have responsibilities. But you're also a human being who deserves love and happiness. And if they can't understand that, maybe they're not the right board." "That's easy to say when you're not the one facing hostile investors." "You're right. I don't know what that pressure feels like." His thumb stroked her cheeks. "But I do know what it feels like to lose yourself trying to make everyone else happy. I did that for 2 years after Sarah died. Performed grief, performed recovery, performed the role of dad who was handling it, and it almost destroyed me. So I'm telling you, as someone who's been there, don't perform for them. Don't sacrifice your happiness to make your board comfortable." Adriana closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her. He was right. She knew he was right. But decades of conditioning, of proving herself in male-dominated spaces, of believing that personal sacrifice was the price of professional success, that was harder to shake than logic could manage. "What if they force me out?" she whispered. "What if the board decides I'm more liability than asset and votes me out as CEO? This is my company, Noah. I built it from nothing, and I'm watching it potentially slip away because I chose to be happy." "Then you'll build something else." Noah kissed her forehead. "You'll take your vision and your brilliance and you'll create something new. Something that doesn't require you to choose between professional success and personal joy. And you'll do it better than before because this time you'll know what actually matters." She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that she could survive losing the company she'd poured her soul into, that her identity was bigger than her CEO title, that she could rebuild if everything burned down. But belief required courage she wasn't sure she possessed. The sound of the front door opening made them both turn. Haley walked in, her backpack sliding off one shoulder, and stopped short when she saw Adriana. "Oh, hi." Haley glanced between them, her expression knowing. "I'm guessing you saw the internet today?" "You saw it too?" Noah asked, concerned. "Kids at school were talking about it, saying stuff about how Adriana's probably just using you for—" She stopped, her cheeks flushing. "Never mind, it was stupid." "What were they saying?" Adriana asked gently, kneeling down to Haley's level despite the girl being only slightly shorter than her. "You can tell me." Haley bit her lip, then the words tumbled out in a rush. "They said rich people don't actually date poor people. They said you're probably doing charity work or social experiments or that dad's your midlife crisis. And when I told them to shut up, that you're good and kind and you really care about us, they said I was naive and dad was probably after your money. The words hit Adriana like physical blows. She'd anticipated judgment aimed at herself, but she hadn't fully considered how that judgment would splash onto Noah and Haley, staining them by association. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice thick. "Haley, none of that is true. Your dad is the best man I've ever known, and what we have is real. Not charity, not an experiment, just real." "I know that." Haley's voice was fierce. "I told them they were idiots who didn't know anything about real people, just gossip and rumors. And then I got detention for calling Emily Henderson's mom a classist." She glanced at Noah. "A classist word I'm not supposed to say." "Haley Carter," Noah said, torn between pride and parental responsibility, "you can't call adults names at school." "Even when they deserve it?" "Especially when they deserve it." But Noah was fighting a smile. "Though I appreciate the spirit of defending our honor." Adriana stood, her decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. "Haley, would you mind if I borrowed your dad for a few hours? There's something I need to do, and I'd really like his support." "Are you going to tell off your mean board members?" Haley asked hopefully. "Something like that." An hour later, Adriana stood in front of her board of directors, Noah at her side, and felt more powerful than she had in any negotiation or deal closing in her entire career. She'd called the emergency meeting, and their expressions ranged from confused to concerned to openly hostile. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," she began, her voice steady. "I know we're here because you're concerned about recent press coverage regarding my personal life, so let me address that directly." She pulled up her own presentation, not graphs and sentiment analysis, but photos. Photos of Lila laughing with Haley, photos of weekend pancake mornings, photos of the father-daughter dance that had started everything. "This is Noah Carter," she continued, gesturing to him. "He's a janitor at my daughter's school, a single father, a former electrical engineer who left his career to care for his daughter after his wife died. He's also the kindest, most decent person I've ever met. And yes, we're in a relationship." Ellen started to interrupt, but Adriana held up her hand. "I know what you're going to say, that this is a distraction, that it affects my judgment, that investors are nervous." And you're right that investors are nervous, because we live in a world where a woman having a personal life is treated as professional liability, while male CEOs marry their secretaries and no one blinks. But here's what I want you to understand. She clicked to the next image. Lila, at her school desk, smiling over her butterfly drawings. 6 weeks ago, my daughter ate lunch alone every day. She didn't have friends. She didn't believe anyone saw her beyond her disability. She was lonely and sad, and I was too buried in quarterly reports to notice. Noah noticed. He saw her, spent time with her, helped her believe she mattered. And that act of kindness, that simple human decency, woke me up to everything I was missing. Another click. A graph showing the success of their accessibility initiative, media coverage, positive brand sentiment. Since I started prioritizing presence in my daughter's life, since I stopped treating my company as my only identity, we've launched our most successful initiative in 5 years. We've gotten unprecedented positive press. We've attracted talent that turned down higher salaries to work for a company with genuine mission. Our stock dipped briefly when gossip started, but it's already recovering because the fundamentals are stronger than rumors. She looked each board member in the eye. "So here's my position. I'm not hiding my relationship. I'm not apologizing for being happy. I'm not choosing between professional success and personal fulfillment because that's a false choice designed to keep women compliant. What I'm doing is running this company with the same passion and brilliance I always have, but now I'm doing it as a whole person instead of a workaholic shell." "Adriana," her CFO started, "we understand you're passionate about this, but nothing." Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "You have 2 choices. You can support me as your CEO, personal life and all, and we'll continue building something extraordinary together. Or you can vote me out, and I'll take my vision and my reputation and my connections, and I'll build something even better with people who understand that leadership doesn't require martyrdom." The room fell silent. Noah stood beside her, not speaking, not interfering, just present, solid and steady, and completely unintimidated by a room full of powerful people judging him. Finally, the chairman of the board, Robert Chen, a venture capitalist who'd backed Adriana from the beginning, spoke. "You'd really walk away from everything you've built?" I'd really walk away, Adriana confirmed, because I finally understand that this company was supposed to serve my life, not consume it. And if staying means sacrificing the people who've taught me how to live again, then it's not worth staying for. Robert leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same intensity he'd used when evaluating her initial pitch a decade ago. Then, slowly, he smiled. About damn time you remembered who you are. You built this company because you wanted to change the world, not because you wanted to make investors rich. We've been so focused on growth and profit that we lost sight of mission. Maybe this... He gestured between Adriana and Noah. Maybe this is exactly the wake-up call we all needed. Ellen looked shocked. Robert, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Robert stood, walking around the table to offer his hand to Noah. Noah Carter, is it? I'm Robert Chen, and I want to apologize for the way this board has made you feel like an intrusion rather than recognizing what you've done for our CEO and her daughter. Noah shook his hand, his expression carefully neutral. I appreciate that, sir. Though to be clear, I didn't do anything expecting recognition. I just saw a lonely kid and wanted to help. That's exactly my point. Robert turned back to the board. We've become so transactional that we've forgotten the human element. Adriana's relationship isn't a liability. It's evidence that she's becoming the kind of leader who understands that business serves life, not the other way around. I'm voting to support her, relationship and all. Who's with me? The vote wasn't unanimous. 2 board members voted against her, their faces tight with disapproval. But the majority supported her, and Adriana felt something shift in her chest. A loosening of fear, a settling of certainty that she'd finally chosen right. After the meeting, Noah pulled her aside in the hallway. That was the most terrifying and impressive thing I've ever witnessed. You basically threatened to quit rather than hide me. I wasn't threatening. I was stating fact. Adriana leaned against him, suddenly exhausted. I meant every word. If they'd voted me out, I would have walked away and not looked back. Even though this company is your whole life? It was my whole life, past tense. She looked up at him. Now I have more. Lila, you, Haley, you've shown me that success without connection is just expensive loneliness, and I'm done being lonely. Noah kissed her then, right there in the corporate hallway with its abstract art and floor-to-ceiling windows, and Adriana kissed him back without caring who might see or judge or turn it into tomorrow's gossip. Because she was done performing for an audience that would never be satisfied anyway. The gossip, as Noah had predicted, did eventually die down. Not immediately. There were a few more painful weeks of speculation and invasive articles, but gradually public attention shifted to newer scandals and fresher drama. Adriana and Noah simply lived their lives, refusing to hide or explain or justify, and eventually the world got bored watching people just be happy. 3 months after the board meeting, Adriana made another announcement. She was stepping back from day-to-day operations to become executive chair, bringing in a new CEO who could handle the operational side while she focused on vision and innovation. The business press called it everything from early retirement to forced resignation, but Adriana knew the truth. It was liberation. With more time and less operational burden, she could finally be the mother Lila deserved. She attended every school event, volunteered for field trip chaperoning, spent evenings helping with homework and listening to elaborate butterfly lectures. And slowly, carefully, the distance between them closed until Lila stopped looking surprised every time Adriana showed up. Until I love you became ordinary instead of extraordinary. Noah and Haley became fixtures in their lives. Weekend visits expanding to weeknight dinners, shared holidays, casual intimacy that felt like family long before anyone used the word. They moved carefully around the question of future, content to exist in a present that was already more than either had hoped for. Until one Sunday morning, nearly a year after that first dance, when Noah and Adriana sat on her patio drinking coffee while the girls splashed in the pool, and he said quietly, I've been thinking. Dangerous pastime, Adriana teased. I'm serious. Noah set down his coffee cup and turned to face her fully. I've been thinking about the future, about what we're building here, about whether we're just dating indefinitely or if we're heading somewhere. Adriana's heart kicked into overdrive. Where do you want to be heading? Forward. Noah took her hand, his rough fingers gentle against hers. Together. Officially. I'm not great at romantic speeches, and this probably isn't the perfect moment, but Adriana, I love you. I love your brilliance and your vulnerability, your strength, and your willingness to admit weakness. I love watching you with Lila, seeing you grow into the mother you always had the capacity to be. I love our chaos and our pancakes and the way you've let me and Haley into your world despite every logical reason to keep your distance. Noah, let me finish. He smiled, nervous now. I know we're complicated. I know our lives don't fit neatly together. I know there will always be people who think I'm not good enough for you or that you're making a mistake. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life earning your trust, supporting your dreams, and building something beautiful with you and our girls. So Adriana Pearson. He slid off the couch onto one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. Will you marry me? The ring was simple, elegant, perfect. Not the massive diamond her wealth could have demanded, but a delicate band with a small sapphire that caught the morning light. It was chosen with care, not cost, and Adriana loved it immediately. Yes! The word came out choked with emotion. God, yes, 1,000 times yes. Noah slipped the ring onto her finger, and Adriana pulled him up to kiss him properly, tasting salt from tears she didn't remember starting to cry. From the pool, they heard twin squeals of delight. Apparently their private moment had been witnessed by two 9-year-olds who had zero sense of romantic privacy. You said yes, Lila called out, bouncing in her floaties. Haley, she said yes. I knew she would. Haley splashed over to the pool's edge. Does this mean you're my stepmom now, or do we have to wait for the wedding? Adriana laughed, dizzy with happiness. We have to wait for the wedding. But yes, sweetheart, I'll be your stepmom. If you want me to be. Obviously, I want you to be. You make really good pancakes now. The wedding, when it finally happened 6 months later, was small and perfect. Just close family and friends in Adriana's backyard, butterfly decorations made by Lila and Haley, vows written from the heart instead of borrowed from tradition. Lila and Haley stood as junior bridesmaids, wearing matching dresses with butterfly wings embroidered on the backs. And when the officiant pronounced Noah and Adriana married, both girls cheered louder than anyone else. At the reception, Noah pulled Adriana onto their makeshift dance floor, and she thought about that first dance, the one they'd never actually shared, the one she'd only witnessed from a gymnasium doorway. Back then, she'd been drowning in guilt and distance, unable to see a path forward that included genuine connection. And now here she was, dancing with the man who'd saved her daughter, and in doing so, saved her too. What are you thinking? Noah murmured, swaying her gently to music played by a string quartet she'd hired primarily because Lila loved the way cellos sounded. I'm thinking about butterflies, Adriana said, about metamorphosis and migration, and the way some journeys require you to completely dissolve before you can transform into what you're meant to become. That's very poetic for someone who claims she's not romantic. I'm learning. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. You're teaching me. You and Lila and Haley. You're teaching me how to be human again instead of just successful. You were always human. You just forgot for a while. Well, I'm remembering now. Adriana looked up at him, her husband, her partner, her unexpected salvation. Thank you for waiting while I figured it out. Thank you for being brave enough to try. They danced until Lila and Haley demanded their turn, and then it was all four of them swaying together in the evening light, a family built from broken pieces and unexpected kindness. Later, when the guests had gone home and the girls had fallen asleep tangled together in Lila's room, Noah and Adriana stood in their backyard looking up at stars. No second thoughts? Noah asked, pulling her close. Not even one. Adriana turned in his arms. Though I should warn you, I'm planning to get worse at corporate meetings and better at being present. The new CEO is handling operations beautifully, which means I have time to focus on what actually matters. Which is? This. She gestured to encompass everything. The house, the sleeping children, him. Us. Family. Making sure Lila knows she's loved and seen. Making sure Haley knows she's claimed, not just tolerated. Making sure you know every single day that you're the best decision I ever made. That's a lot of pressure. You can handle it. You're good with pressure. Noah laughed and kissed her, sweet and lingering. And Adriana thought about paths not taken, about the woman she'd been before that father-daughter dance, about all the ways life could shatter and reform into something stronger than before. She'd lost so much time with Lila, so many moments she could never reclaim. But she was here now, present and accounted for. And that was what mattered. 2 years later, when baby Mason Carter Pearson arrived after a pregnancy that had surprised everyone but delighted the girls beyond measure, Adriana held her son and marveled at second chances, at the grace of new beginnings, at the way love could expand to hold more than you thought possible. Lila, now 11 and more confident than Adriana had ever imagined she'd become, held her baby brother with the careful reverence of someone who understood how precious fragile things were. "He's perfect, Mom. Look at his tiny fingers." "He has your nose," Haley added, peering over Lila's shoulder. "That's good. Better than Dad's nose." "Hey," Noah protested mildly, but he was smiling as he watched his expanded family cluster around the hospital bed. "Nothing wrong with my nose." "It's a perfectly serviceable nose," Adriana agreed, "but I'm glad Mason got mine." Later, after visiting hours ended and the girls had gone home with Noah's sister, after the nurses had taken Mason to the nursery and encouraged Adriana to rest, Noah climbed into the hospital bed beside his wife and held her while she cried tears that were equal parts joy and grief. "What is it?" he asked gently. "I'm happy," Adriana managed. "So happy it almost hurts, and I'm sad for the years I lost with Lila, for the mother I wasn't but should have been. And I'm grateful you found us when you did, that you saw her when no one else would, that you loved us both enough to stay through all the complicated parts. And I'm terrified I'll screw it up again, that I'll fall back into old patterns and wake up one day to realize I've missed Mason's childhood the same way I almost missed Lila's." "You won't." Noah's arms tightened around her. "Because you're not that person anymore. You've changed, Adriana. Fundamentally, permanently changed. And yes, you'll mess up sometimes because everyone does. But you'll show up, you'll be present, you'll love them through your imperfections." "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "Practice. And because I've had the same fears with Haley. Still do sometimes." He kissed the top of her head. "But we've got this. We've got each other. And we've got two incredible girls who are probably already planning Mason's entire childhood." Adriana laughed through her tears and let herself be held, let herself believe that happiness wasn't temporary, that she deserved the family she'd built, that transformation was possible even when you thought you were too old or too broken or too lost to change. 4 years after baby Mason came home, the Carter Pearson household was controlled chaos. Homework and diapers, teenage drama and toddler tantrums, soccer games and board meetings, and butterfly migration tracking. Lila, now 15, had discovered a passion for accessibility technology and spent weekends interning at her mother's company, designing interfaces that would help kids like her interact with the world more easily. Haley had become a fierce advocate for disability rights, writing op-eds for the school paper that caught the attention of national publications. And Mason, barely 4 years old, ruled the house with the cheerful tyranny of youngest children everywhere, equally adored by his parents and older sisters. One evening in late autumn, the whole family gathered in the butterfly room, now expanded to accommodate Mason's toddler chaos, to watch a documentary about monarch migration. It was tradition now, marking the season when the Methuselah generation began their impossible journey south. "Did you know," Lila said during a commercial break, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd studied this subject for years, "that monarchs who make the migration carry the memories of the journey in their bodies even though they've never done it before? Like the path is encoded in them genetically." "Like we carry memories from our parents?" Mason asked, snuggled against Noah's side. "Kind of. Like we inherit more than just looks. We inherit experiences, patterns, ways of being in the world." Adriana watched her daughter explain complex genetics to her 4-year-old brother with patience and enthusiasm, watched Haley add her own observations, watched Noah orchestrate the chaos with easy confidence, and felt her heart expand with gratitude so profound it was almost prayer. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Lila asked, noticing her mother's distraction. Butterflies, Adriana said honestly, and cocoons, and the way you have to completely dissolve before you can transform into something new. That's dark, Haley observed, but also kind of beautiful. We all used to be in cocoons, Lila said softly, her eyes meeting her mother's across the room. All of us, in our own ways. You and your work, Dad and his grief, me and my loneliness, Haley and losing her mom. We were all wrapped up tight, dissolved, waiting. But we broke out, Haley continued, catching the thread. Together, like butterflies emerging at the same time, helping each other spread our wings. That's very poetic for someone who claims poetry is boring, Noah teased Haley. I contain multitudes, she replied primly, then ruined it by sticking her tongue out at him. Mason, not fully understanding but wanting to participate, announced, I'm a butterfly too, with big wings. And just like that, the profound moment dissolved into laughter, and a toddler running around with his arms spread, making buzzing noises that were definitely not butterfly sounds. And Adriana thought, yes, this is it. This is what happiness looks like. Not perfect or polished or anything like what she'd imagined when she was building her empire and missing her daughter's life. This messy, loud, chaotic, beautiful thing called family. Built from broken pieces, held together by kindness and commitment and the willingness to keep showing up even when it was hard. Transformed by a single act of compassion on a gymnasium floor, by a janitor who saw a lonely girl and chose to dance with her, by a mother who finally learned that presence mattered more than presence. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Noah found Adriana in her home office, looking at old photos from that first father-daughter dance. The video that Emily Henderson's mother had posted all those years ago was still online, occasionally resurfacing when someone wrote an article about their family or shared it as a feel-good story. Hey, Noah said softly, coming to stand behind her chair. You okay? More than okay. Adriana tilted her head back to look at him. I was just thinking about that night, about how close I came to missing it. If you hadn't asked Lila to dance, if I hadn't seen that video, if I hadn't gotten on that plane from Tokyo, we wouldn't be here. Any of us. But you did get on the plane. You did show up. Because you made me see what I was missing. She stood and turned to face him fully. You saved us, Noah. Lila and me both. We were drowning in isolation and guilt, and I didn't even realize it until I saw you dancing with my daughter like she mattered, like she was worth choosing. She was always worth choosing. You both were. Noah pulled her close, familiar now, home. But you did the hard work of actually changing. I just gave you a reason to try. That's not a small thing. Neither is choosing to be brave enough to transform. He kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Of the mother you've become, the person you've let yourself be. Adriana closed her eyes and let herself be held, let herself believe that redemption was possible, that second chances were real, that broken people could heal and build something beautiful from their scars. She thought about butterflies and migration and the impossible journeys that required complete dissolution before transformation. Thought about the woman she'd been, driven, successful, lonely, and the woman she'd become, still driven, still successful, but no longer lonely, no longer willing to sacrifice presence for profit. Thank you, she whispered against Noah's chest, for seeing me, for staying, for teaching me how to be human. Thank you for letting me. Noah held her tighter. For taking the risk on a janitor with a kind heart and no money. For choosing love over logic. Best choice I ever made. They stood like that in the quiet of her office, surrounded by evidence of success that finally felt meaningful because it was balanced by connection, by family, by the ordinary, extraordinary magic of being chosen and choosing in return. Outside, autumn wind rustled through trees, carrying the promise of winter and the distant memory of butterflies that had already begun their migration south. And in bedrooms down the hall, 3 children slept. 2 girls who'd learned they were worth seeing, 1 boy who would grow up knowing he was loved. All of them proof that kindness could change destinies, that a single dance could rewrite futures, that broken families could heal and merge and become something stronger than any of them had been alone. In the darkness, Adriana smiled and held her husband close and thought about metamorphosis, about migration patterns encoded in tiny bodies, about the way some journeys required you to dissolve completely before you could learn to fly. She'd been in her cocoon for so long, wrapped in work and guilt and the belief that she had to choose between success and happiness. But she'd emerged. They all had. Together, helping each other spread wet wings and learn to soar, building a family from brokenness and hope, and one janitor's willingness to dance with a girl everyone else ignored. And somewhere in the blueprint of their merged lives, in the space between what was and what would be, the future unfurled with all the impossible beauty of butterflies taking flight, fragile and fierce, and absolutely undeniably worth every risk they'd taken to get here.